Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Start with the Mangekyō and leave Konoha with Madara. Chapter 41. At this moment, a man in a straw raincoat stood in front of her silently, and slowly raised a palm to face the whistling water dragon. Puff! The unstoppable dragon head dissipated directly, as if the palm was an indestructible stone, and the dragon body behind it also exploded inch by inch, turning into streams of cool water, disappearing in the palm. The girl's eyes were full of disbelief. Such a fierce ninjutsu was easily resolved by the person in front of her. Fight with swords, what ninjutsu? It's really unethical, Shen Yu said lazily. He raised his hat slightly and glanced at everyone coldly. If it was a fight between samurai, I wouldn't intervene, but there are ninjas among you. Be careful, the girl suddenly exclaimed. Shen Yu's eyes turned away, and a big man sneaked up to his side and swung a sledgehammer to hit him in the face. Bang! The bamboo hat shattered instantly, and the wood chips flew everywhere, but Shen Yu did not move at all. In the wildly dancing black hair, his calm eyes and his unscathed face were revealed. The girl could not help but stare in amazement. She opened her beautiful eyes and saw clearly that the moment the hammer hit Shen Yu's cheek, a ripple-like water wave seemed to be swaying in the air, like a transparent barrier shield, but it was as solid as a rock, blocking the attack for him. Shen Yu turned around and punched, and released a huge force at the front of his fist. With a dull sound, the giant was hit by this punch and half of his body was destroyed. His bones and flesh were shattered into powder, turning into a blood mist that splashed down, dyeing the snow behind him blood red. Chakra fluctuations were swaying behind him, and the three people were brewing some ninjutsu again, and the remaining bandits also rushed to help. However, Shen Yu did not look back, but just closed his eyes slightly. In the air, an invisible wind flowed through in an instant. In less than a second, he opened his eyes. The girl noticed that his body seemed to shake slightly, as if he suddenly lost his support, but he stood up again the moment he opened his eyes, as if nothing had happened. She had practiced swordsmanship for many years and was very sensitive to everyone's subtle body movements, so she caught Shen Yu's abnormality. Plop! The girl's ears pricked up and she quickly looked behind Shen Yu. A surprising scene appeared. More than a dozen people behind him, and even all the bandits at the head and tail of the caravan, fell to the ground one after another with a plop sound, like boiled noodles. Their expressions were surprisingly consistent, their pupils were dilated and lost focus, and some people even had saliva hanging from the corners of their mouths, and a series of stupid expressions were stiff on their faces, like a group portrait frozen in the painter's pen. It was like someone had taken away their souls. Instant kill. He just killed these people in seconds. The girl was so shocked that her cherry mouth opened unconsciously and could not close for a long time. What kind of trick is this? It's so scary. Shen Yu smiled and moved his neck. Spiritualization technique is indeed a forbidden technique. It cannot be defended or avoided. It kills people invisibly. It is really effective to clear soldiers. Just now, in that short moment, his spirit body left his body and shuttled between the eyebrows of more than 20 people. Not only did he wipe out their souls, but he also successfully obtained a piece of information. Shen Yu was surprised. These guys seemed to be just ordinary robbers, but in fact they were a well-armed private army serving a mysterious senior official of the Iron Country. Among them were wandering warriors, killers, and a senior ninja from the Hidden Mist Village. The Hidden Mist Village. Haha, they have reached out to the Iron Country. This ambush was not accidental, but premeditated. Interesting, someone wants to kill this caravan, or to say, kill someone in the caravan, and doesn't want him to return to Takeo Castle alive. The crisis was resolved, but Shen Yu also exposed his strength. As a master who defeated all enemies in a breath, he naturally enjoyed a completely different treatment from before. At this moment, he was sitting in the most luxurious carriage, with delicious food and wine on the table. Everyone in the caravan came to thank him, even the two cheap warriors were no exception. After all, if it weren't for Shen Yu, they would probably have been beaten to death. Miyamoto-kun. Sugawara Glass sat beside Shen Yu, legs together, eyes sincere. Thank you for your help. If it weren't for your help, I'm afraid we would have been killed by the thieves. Why are you still talking so elegantly? Shen Yu thought to himself, nodded calmly, yes. On behalf of the entire caravan, I thank you for your help. Yes. He half closed his eyes, didn't speak, pretending to be an expert. You are so kind, I have no way to repay you, I can only. Go on, why don't you continue? Shenyu secretly opened one eye and looked at her. The woman was about 17 or 18 years old. Although she was the captain of the caravan, she was dressed quite simply, wearing a coarse linen shirt, a short light brown hair, and a katana with an exquisite scabbard and a sophisticated hilt. She was at the age of puberty, with red lips and white teeth, and a beautiful appearance. Although she was not as beautiful and refined as Uchiha Hikaru, she also had her own characteristics. Especially the linen shirt that was about to burst at the chest, bearing the weight that should not be at this age. She burped lightly and quickly covered her mouth. The faint smell of alcohol wafted over, making Shenyu frown slightly. This girl actually drank alcohol. Shenyu silently retracted his gaze and sat upright. Nishiko took a deep breath, and 2 blushes suddenly climbed on her pretty face. She subconsciously looked away and looked at her toes. I have decided to give you my most precious thing. Shenyu looked at his nose and his heart, and couldn't help but speed up his heartbeat. The girl mustered up her courage, raised her delicate head, and looked at the handsome boy in front of her affectionately. She bit her bright red lips, raised her bare hands, and slowly untied the linen belt. No way, you are putting me in this kind of situation. Are you testing my Dao heart? Shenyu was too tired to complain. He had been practicing hard until now, and was used to fighting in blood, but this kind of ambiguous scene was still the first time he had seen it. Xiaozi was extremely shy, and her chest rose and fell with her breathing. Somehow, her green jade fingers seemed to be undressing for the first time, and she was unable to untie the waist rope. This time was also a bit difficult for Shenyu. A gust of cold wind blew in from the window, as if opening the mud seal of a pottery jar, cooling the atmosphere in the carriage a little, and Shenyu also calmed down. At this moment, a lavender long sword was handed to him tremblingly. Ah, Nose bit her lip, turned her head away, and introduced in a soft voice. This sword is called First Snow of the Dragon, which is the most precious thing in my life. This is my father's masterpiece of his life. It is carefully forged using 128 processes of the Dragon of the Dragon. The blade pattern is exquisite, the blade is as bright as snow, and it can cut hair without being stained by blood. The purple jade leather scabbard is natural. Shenyu stared at the saber blankly, his mouth opened and closed. So, you just took off your clothes to take the sword. Ah, could it be that Miyamoto likes my waist rope? Nose looked up blankly. Oh, it's okay. Shenyu smiled and declined, reaching out and gently pushing away. First Snow, a gentleman does not take away what others like, and I just did it by chance, so there is no question of not being able to repay. His face was calm, but he was roaring in his heart. Use this to test cadres. In the carriage, after Shenyu's polite refusal, Xiaozi finally gave up the idea of giving the sword as a gift. Miss Xiaozi, I have a question. Xiaozi hurriedly said, Miyamoto-kun, please feel free to talk. Well, Shenyu pondered for a moment and said, is there something wrong with your sword forging studio? After saying this, Xiaozi's originally bright face suddenly dimmed. Her eyes drifted to the stove beside her, where the already warmed rice wine was placed. Shenyu understood, smiled and took the wine pot and handed it to her. Xiaozi was stunned for a moment, raised her eyes and saw Shenyu's warm eyes, and she was not vague, grabbed the wine pot and took a sip, and then took a long breath. Our Chamber of Commerce is about to change hands, she whispered. As she talked, Shenyu slowly understood. Why can such a large chamber of commerce only hire 2 warriors to escort it? Why does the middle-aged man keep sighing? Why did Sugawara Glass drown her sorrows in alcohol? The legendary Chamber of Commerce in the Land of Iron, the swordsmith, is about to change its owner. 3 months ago, the Ikawa family of the 3 Traditions of Iron was held accountable by the daimyo for their poor sword forging, and the head of the Ikawa family, Ikawa Gentaro, fled for fear of punishment. He emptied his mansion overnight, took away most of the Chamber of Commerce's funds, defected to the Land of Water, and the Ikawa family scattered like birds and beasts. The daimyo was furious and ordered the heads of the Niwa and Sugawara families to hunt down Ikawa Gentaro and bring him to justice, and appointed the shogunate army to assist, but unexpectedly they were attacked by a powerful enemy during the pursuit. The shogunate army suffered heavy losses, and the head of the Sugawara family was seriously injured and died, leaving only the head of the Isshinden family, Niwamaya, alive, but also seriously injured. The head of the Sugawara family entrusted his son to his only daughter, Sugawara Glass, before his death, and entrusted his daughter to Niwamaya to take care of her, and then passed away. The Sugawara family was weak to begin with, and was instigated by villains to refuse to pass down the true skills. When the head of the family died, the monkeys scattered when the tree fell. When the disaster struck, the family members fled. Those who should hide their identities hid their identities, and those who should seek refuge fled. Soon, they were eaten up by the powerful. Only the Niwa family, who insisted on the true inheritance, had no worries about inheritance. Although Niwamaya had no children, he had 3 apprentices, all of whom received the true teachings from their master, but they were inevitably weak and the building was about to collapse. In just a few months, most of the 3 inheritances were lost, and Tantosai was unable to save the situation. The turbulent undercurrent involved countless powerful people, and the aristocratic families involved were held accountable and exiled. Niwamaya's second apprentice Ryunosuke couldn't bear to see Tantosai decline, so he suggested to Maya to marry Sugawara's only daughter to the powerful, so as to get close to the relationship and stabilize the overall situation with the help of the powerful. But he was immediately opposed by Mei, who was furious. My friend entrusted his daughter to me before his death because he couldn't bear to see her alone. Now you want me to sell his daughter for fame. Isn't that putting me in an unfair position? What will people think of me? Master, the building is about to collapse. Only by relying on the powerful can we have a glimmer of hope. As long as we can get through the difficulties in front of us, why should we be afraid of the gossips of the people? Shut up, you evil beast, how is this different from betrayal? Don't mention this matter again. Ryunosuke had no choice but to give up. After his apprentice left, Niwamei calmed down. While his anger dissipated, the idea of relying on the powerful lingered in his mind. Finally, he made a shocking decision. Niwamaya, the head of Isshin Chuan and the helmsman of Totosai, wants to marry his only daughter. All heroes in the world, samurai who can hold on to the end in the ring, regardless of age or background, can become the son-in-law of the Niwa family. The novel was taken from the Raleigh's website. Close where you're reading it and support us on our website for more free novels. After the news was announced, the entire Iron Country was boiling. Ordinary people were extremely excited, and the powerful and wealthy were eager to sign up. The first reason is that Niwamaya has no children. If he marries into the family as a son-in-law, then in the future, not only Isshin Chuan, but also the entire Totosai can be taken into his pocket. The second reason is that Niwa Yukino is born with a beautiful appearance. Although she is only 17 years old, she has grown into a graceful and charming girl with a charming curve. With such a beautiful appearance, it is more than enough to match the powerful and wealthy. For ordinary people, this is a good opportunity to rise to fame overnight, but the powerful and wealthy sneered at this, because these ordinary people could not train samurai who could rival the clans, and the position of the son-in-law of the swordsmith would inevitably fall into the hands of the powerful and wealthy. Sugawara Glass was so smart that she immediately smelled the smell of conspiracy from this matter. The competition was approaching, but she was transferred on a temporary mission. The Niwa family did not want her to ruin the plan and was determined to sell their daughter for glory. But Yukino was not only her best friend, but also a sister who grew up together. She guessed that the victim of this conspiracy should have been herself, but because of the righteousness of the head of the Niwa family, her good sister became a scapegoat. The reason why she was in such a hurry was because she wanted to go back as soon as possible and wanted to marry someone in place of Yukino. She couldn't bear she fell into the tiger's mouth. Originally, the one who was going to be sacrificed was me. Glass held the bottomless wine jug, her eyes red. Shen Yu looked at her, and a bold idea grew in his heart. After the battle between Hashirama and Madara, the whole pattern of the ninja world will be rewritten, because Hashirama will die in a few years, and Madara will not be able to escape because of the Moon Eye plan. Without the suppression of the two great gods here, the war is coming. The next ninja world will inevitably fall into a long period of turmoil. At that time, the economy of all participating countries will be affected. Only the Iron Country, which is independent of the ninja village system, can survive. The Iron Country has sufficient warriors and outstanding sword forging technology. It happened that Sword Forging House suffered this change. If it can help it overcome the difficulties, take the opportunity to invest in the Chamber of Commerce, start cross-border business, and sell weapons, wouldn't it be a big profit? If you can control the capital chain of the Iron Country, you may not be unable to conquer the Iron Country in the future. Someone has land and money. With capital in hand, it is not impossible to train your own team. This idea took root in Shen Yu's heart and could never be shaken off. The conditions are generous, you can do it. He took a deep breath and looked at Glass with burning eyes. Miss Glass, I have a plan to restore the Chamber of Commerce. What? Glass was slightly stunned. Looking at Shen Yu's sincere eyes and the confident smile on his lips, he couldn't help but think of his powerful figure just now. If it was him. What's your plan? Shen Yu picked up a fruit and put it in his mouth. This matter can be complicated or simple. Let me ask you, what is the biggest crisis facing your Chamber of Commerce now? Sovereignty is about to change hands, and it will completely become a tool in the hands of the powerful. Naoko blurted out. Yukino will also lose her freedom and sacrifice her own happiness. Really? Do you have to rely on the powerful? Shen Yu smiled and said, what if you don't do this? Don't do this. Naoko was speechless for a moment, thought about it, and said, the Chamber of Commerce was originally run by 3 family heads so that it could be independent of the powerful. Now it is falling apart, and most of its resources have been lost. Only Uncle Niwa is left, he will definitely not be able to support it. Shen Yu chewed the fruit. If he can't support it, what will happen? It will, Glass seemed to have grasped some key points, it will be calculated by people with ulterior motives, divided and eroded. So, Shen Yu knocked on the table, this matter is ultimately caused by the powerful people of the Iron Country. Their greed has caused your crisis. In the carriage, Shen Yu said solemnly. In their eyes, your Dan Dao Jai is now a piece of fat meat, and whoever catches it wants to get a piece of it. The reason why your Uncle Niwa held such a martial arts competition to recruit a bride is to turn the spearhead and let the powerful people fight to the death first. The loser will leave in disgrace, and the winner will grab the fruits. In this way, the loss of the Chamber of Commerce will be minimized. Although it still cannot change the final result, it is nothing more than letting Dan Dao Jai change its name. With the support of the powerful, you will not go bankrupt. Nose suddenly got excited and stood up. But, does no one care about Yukino? Do we have to sacrifice the happiness of women like us to save the Chamber of Commerce? Don't get excited, listen to me. Shen Yu calmed down. He waved his hand. Why do you think your Chamber of Commerce was so smooth before, and no powerful people dared to make plans against you? A trace of resentment flashed across Nachiroko's face. Of course it's because my father and Uncle Ishikawa are here. They are not only the most famous swordsmiths in the Iron Country, but also first-class warriors. Our 3 families are of the same blood, and others certainly dare not make trouble. Well, you finally got to the point. Shen Yu smiled slightly. The powerful are good at scheming, and there are too many interests involved. I am not good at intrigue, but I am willing to speak for you. He changed the subject. Of course, if someone doesn't listen, I also know a little bit of boxing. His eyes were cold and majestic. He had been with Madara for these years, and he also had a little bit of domineering, which made Nachiroko tremble in his heart. Shen Yu looked at the girl's eyes and thought to himself that what I said was a bit subtle, and this girl didn't understand it, right? I will kill anyone who dares to make things difficult for you. You are willing to help us. Of course, Glass understood what Shen Yu meant, and a warm current surged in her heart, but it cooled down in the next second. She hesitated and asked, what do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Of course, for money, or what else? For your beauty. Shen Yu was calm and straightforward, saying, transfer 30% of your Chamber of Commerce's shares to me, and I will take charge for you. I will kill anyone who causes trouble for you. This, Glass hesitated. The Sugawara family, originally held 40% of the Chamber of Commerce's shares, but, after that change, my personal shares are only 10%. If you can really save us from the water and fire, I can transfer all the shares under my name to you. 30%, not a penny less. Shen Yu slowly pulled out a silk scarf and wiped his hands. As for me, I have no money or power, and I am even a foreigner, a lonely man. That's why I won't take those shitty dignitaries seriously. When that time comes, even if it's your name, I will kill you to show you. When he said this, his face was calm and his tone was indifferent, but he revealed incomparable confidence in his calmness, as if he was talking about a trivial matter. Naoko was shocked and stared at the boy in front of her. If she only looked at his face, he was just a handsome boy next door, who could shine with sunshine when he smiled. But this harmless guy just killed dozens of people while chatting and laughing. She knew that he could definitely do it. When the caravan arrived in the capital, under the guidance of Naoko, Shenyu walked into the gate of Dandaojai, with a step that did not recognize any relatives. After a while, he finally met the current president of the Chamber of Commerce, the head of Ishin Chuan, Niwa Maya. You must be the savior of Naoko and others. This is a tall middle-aged man with a neat beard, a thin face, a sickly pale face, and a wide frame that shows his former tall figure. He walked into the guest room tremblingly with a cane. Beside him, a woman with beautiful eyebrows and eyes was supporting and serving him. The woman was dressed in a simple and elegant white dress. Although her face was covered by a veil, her sparkling eyes were full of beauty. Yukino. Naoko walked over happily and took the woman's arm enthusiastically. Shenyu took a look and saw that there were two young men following behind Maya. One was tall, with firm features and a shiny bald head, which made him look tough. The other had a handsome face, but his eyes were lazy, as if he was wandering in the world. These are Uncle Niwa's two disciples, the eldest disciple Ryunosuke and the second disciple Tetsuya. Naoko introduced. The moment he saw Tetsuya, a barely perceptible brilliance flashed in Shenyu's eyes, and some kind of power was throbbing in his body. Strange, this kid's body. When Niwa Maya learned that Shenyu was the savior of the caravan, he immediately treated him with courtesy and entertained him with good food and drink. After a few polite words, Naoko said, "Uncle Niwa, this Miyamoto said that it is okay." Niwa Maya immediately noticed her. He looked like he was about to say something but stopped himself, and raised his hand to interrupt. It is a serious crime to fail to welcome the distinguished guest. How can we disturb his rest? Let's withdraw first and let the distinguished guest have a good rest. He ordered. Ryunosuke, treat him with good wine and food, and thank you gifts and money are indispensable. Don't neglect them. After saying this, he led everyone out of the guest room, leaving only two apprentices to accompany him. Shenyu nodded with a smile, but this smile was also very subtle. Ryunosuke touched his bald head and came over to ask, "I heard from Naoko that you killed all the robbers by yourself." Shenyu glanced at him. "You don't believe it?" Noko's words, "Of course I believe it," Ryunosuke said. "I just sighed. I don't know when the Iron Country has a master like you. It's really a hero born young." Jai on the side suddenly yawned. "Brother, I'll leave this distinguished guest to you. I'm not needed here. I'll go back to prepare for the competition." "You," Ryunosuke glared, but it was not easy to get angry in front of Shenyu, so he could only wave his hand and let him go. "Competition?" Shenyu asked with his head tilted. "If I'm not mistaken, this competition is tomorrow's martial arts competition to recruit a bride." "Hey, junior brother and Yukino have been childhood sweethearts since we were young. I heard that master wants to marry her off, and there has been a lot of fuss." Ryunosuke said helplessly. "Don't look at him as lazy, he cares a lot about Yukino. No matter how I persuade him, I can't stop him from participating in this martial arts competition." Shenyu narrowed his eyes slightly and said, "Interesting," in his heart. Not only delicious food was prepared in the guest room, but also a slender Yushin sword was placed horizontally on the knife rack. The scabbard was light blue, with a slightly curved arc throughout the body. There was no blade guard, but the handle was very delicately made, with a simple wood color and a circle of fine two-color bands. Shenyu walked over with interest, held the handle, and the knife was 3 inches out of the sheath. The blade was as smooth as a mirror, and the sharp white light flowed slowly along the blade. Just looking at it, you can feel a chill. He looked at the sharp blade, stretched out a finger and pressed it deeply, then wiped it hard. Nothing happened. The finger was still normal, not even the slightest mark was left. Shenyu frowned. A blue light emerged from his palm, and after letting the chakra blade of autumn dew on leaves completely wrap the blade, he stretched out his hand and wiped the blade again. A faint white mark appeared on the tip of his finger, which was extremely subtle and disappeared in an instant. If it weren't for Shenyu's top vision, it would be almost impossible to detect. The sharpness is not bad. Shen Yu nodded. Ryunosuke beside him immediately came back to his senses. The scene just now made him sweat coldly. He stepped forward and introduced. This sword is called Frost's Heart, which is made of outer space black iron and forged by the master. It was originally sent to the shrine for worship, but if you like it, you can take it. Really? Shen Yu asked. Of course it's true, Ryunosuke said, waving to the outside of the door. Two servants came in with trays in their hands, one of which was neatly arranged with clothes. Shen Yu glanced at his slightly shabby raincoat, put down the divine sword, and took the robe with a shake of his hands. It was a black brocade robe, samurai style, with violet flower patterns printed on both sides of the lapels, and a light purple shimon rope tied on it to tie the waist. The style and size of the clothing fit the body perfectly. What the hell, a wandering samurai? Is this what President Niwa meant? He turned around and asked. Of course, the master has instructed that the thank you gift and thank you money must not be less. Ryunosuke pointed to another tray and said, here is 30 million taels in cash, just a little thought from the president. Niwa Maya, worthy of being the one who led the dagger forging company, for decades, even though he was bedridden, he was still able to maintain the operation of the Chamber of Commerce in an orderly manner, and arranged everything big and small. Shen Yu asked curiously, aren't you rich? Why do you only hire 2 samurai for such an important task as escorting the caravan? Ryunosuke sighed. Since the incident at the Chamber of Commerce, the Shogunate has limited the number of samurai we can hire, and does not allow us to train samurai ourselves, which is why it has come to this. I see. Shen Yu's face flashed with understanding, and he waved his hand without any courtesy. Then thank your president for his kindness on my behalf. Ryunosuke bowed. Okay, then I'll take my leave. Wait, Shen Yu suddenly called him, with the corner of his mouth slightly raised, tell your president a message for me. At the same time, in the underground base of Kanabi Bridge, Uchiha Hikaru quietly walked into the stone door, fine sand fell, and the stone slabs on both sides moved inwards and closed tightly. As soon as she came in, she heard the heavy breathing coming from the inner room. Uchiha Madara was pale and lying weakly on the stone chair. His chest was bleeding, and a piece of flesh that obviously did not belong to him was neatly sutured in the middle of the wound. This scene was hideous and terrifying. The piece of flesh was like a bright red heart, beating with his breathing. Hearing the movement, he slowly raised his eyes, like a brown bear waking up from hibernation, and his red and white eyes turned to the door faintly. What's going on outside? Guang ignored his question and walked in without saying a word. She picked up the towel beside the sink, soaked it skillfully, and wrung it out. The clean water flowed down her white jade hands. She came to Ban's side and wiped the blood from his wound for him. Ban groaned. Even though Guang's movements were very gentle, he twitched in pain just by touching the wound. The piece of meat was like some kind of strong acid, corroding his whole body along the blood vessels. The wet towel was quickly stained red with blood. This burning pain in the tarsal bones tortured his nerves all the time. Guang Shu frowned slightly. It's been 2 days, why is there no sign of healing? Isn't it said that Senju Hashirama's chakra contains vitality? Ban panted, forced himself to smile miserably. This is the only way to peace. If it goes smoothly, I will doubt its authenticity. Guang frowned, washed and wrung the blood-stained towel, put it up again, and then whispered, before we started the transplant, Senju Hashirama woke up. Really? Ban sat up slightly and motioned for her to continue. According to the information I got from torture, Hashirama left the village as soon as he woke up. In less than 3 days, he captured all the tailed beasts in the ninja world except the 1 tail and the 9 tail. At the same time, Konoha village sent a message to the other 4 major ninja villages, gathering the leaders of the 5 major ninja villages to hold something. Guang tried to recall the word, 5 cage talks. Banara let out a long breath and snorted coldly. That guy must want to divide the tailed beasts equally among these ants to maintain that ridiculous balance. Equally divided. Guang tilted her head, not quite understanding. With that kind of power, why not just unify the ninja world? Wouldn't that be more peaceful? She had seen the power of the 9 tail before, and she couldn't understand why she had to lower her posture to the weak for a ruthless man who could subdue 7 in such a short time. So that's why I can't get along with him. Madara was a little depressed. The real balance is never the tailed beasts, but him and me. His wooden head just can't figure this out. He is making a mistake. Once peace collapses, the tailed beasts will definitely become a disaster for ordinary people. At this time, Madara noticed Guang's hesitant expression, and his tone gradually slowed down. Is there any news about Shenyu? Ah, Guang's eyes trembled, and he quickly said, according to the information we got, he was entangled by the Thousand Hands Tobirama at that time, and a huge red barrier rose at the place of battle. When the barrier dissipated, Shenyu also disappeared, as if he had evaporated from the earth. Madara pondered for a moment. He was transferred away by the flying thunder god's guided lightning. Tobirama, that guy, still uses these tricks to fight with a child. Little child. Guang raised his head slightly, looked at Madara with a strange look, and thought to himself, is your understanding of this disciple a bit one-sided? Well, then don't worry about it. Don't count on Shenyu for the time being. Ban smiled as a matter of course, he can't tell the directions. It must be very difficult for him to find his way back. Give him some time. I know. Guang nodded, then curled her lips and clenched her little pink fists. He actually made us worry. When he comes back, I must make him look good. Haha, I'm not worried at all. Ban suddenly laughed out loud. Guang didn't dare to face Ban's teasing eyes and deliberately ignored him. Fortunately, at this time, Ban ordered, okay, if there is nothing else, go back and rest. You have worked hard these days. This should be Shenyu's job. But, Lord Ban, Guang looked at his bloody chest with some concern. It doesn't matter. Okay. She took a step and left the stone room. The moment she left, Ban's originally peaceful face suddenly became ferocious, with blue veins exposed and his facial features twisted together. The flesh on his chest was throbbing, and blood was gushing out with every struggle. The pain was almost eating away everything in him. It was as if he was the master of his body and wanted to destroy the invader, Madara. His palms dug deep into the stone in his head, his knuckles turned white. He easily tore the stone chair made of rock. In his mind, a life-threatening thought invaded his spirit crazily, forcing him to dig out the flesh from his chest countless times, the flesh that did not belong to him. But he was overwhelmed by his almost inhuman willpower. Is this the price of everything in the world? Come on, I, Uchiha Madara, can bear it. Konoha village, the land of the Uchiha clan. After a day of training, Uchiha Jing returned to the room. Looking at the empty bedroom and the clean and tidy tatami, his eyes trembled and he sat down against the wall dejectedly. Nissan. In his mind, he unconsciously recalled the familiar yet unfamiliar face. The scenes from a few days ago played like a slideshow, and finally stopped at the pair of exquisite and beautiful pupils that were even evil and enchanting. Those eyes, or really strong. When he thought of those eyes, a bone-chilling coldness spread from his fingertips to his brain. He hugged himself tightly and couldn't help shivering. My brother's chakra has completely changed. It's cold, fierce, and full of murderous intent, but he didn't kill me. He lowered his head and inserted his 10 fingers into his messy hair. I'm the only one in the team who was injured the least. If you hate me so much, why don't you kill me? He stepped his head deeply into his arched legs, his cheeks wet. I have made up my mind to die. Brother, Lord Tobirama said that your life and death are unknown, but I still hope you are alive. After a while, there was a knock on the door. Jing, are you home? Uchiha Jing was refreshed, stood up immediately, wiped his face, and adjusted his expression in front of the mirror before he went to open the door. Captain Huohei. Uchiha Huohei leaned against the door with his arms folded. I need to trouble you for something. What is it? Jing walked out of the room. Fortunately, he did not take off his equipment and was ready to go at any time. Although this young man in tight clothes was young, he was recognized as the strongest person in the clan since Madara and Kamiya left Konoha, and he had a high appeal. Jing looked at this candidate for the clan leader and wondered what could have troubled him to come to find him. He explained, there are a group of children in the tribe who are about your age and have reached the age to sign a summoning contract. We need at least 2 Jonin and several Chunins to escort them to the cat house. Originally, I was responsible for this task, but the 5-cage summit is imminent, and Lord Tobirama personally ordered me to lead people to maintain order at the venue. I am too busy to leave. He showed a look of embarrassment. I thought about it, and you are the only trustworthy Jonin in the tribe. Although you are still young, your strength and reputation are very suitable. I wonder if you all go. Jing nodded immediately. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Really? That's great, Jing, you are such a good person. He was very happy. He patted Jing's shoulder, and his eyes suddenly, I heard about your brother's story. He was also a partner who fought side by side with me. To be honest, I feel bad too. It's okay. Jing pretended to be relieved and said, everyone has to pay the price for their actions. By the way, there is one more thing. Huohei suddenly approached, with a vigilant tone, your other partner is Uchiha Setsuna. I don't know what happened to that guy recently. He has a lot of complaints about Lord Tobarama and may be hostile to you. Be careful. Jing came to the main gate of the clan as agreed. What came into view were more than 20 boys and girls, noisy, and about 20 chunins standing outside. At the front of the team was a young man wearing half-face protective gear and a sinister look. He crossed his arms and his eyes were like a cold and venomous snake. He swept over Jing without hesitation, full of aggression. Hello, Uchiha, Jing. Knock, knock, knock. At midnight, someone knocked on Shenyu's door. Shenyu opened his eyes and got out of bed calmly. The door gradually opened, and a pair of bright and beautiful eyes came into view. It's you. Shenyu raised his eyebrows. Why not Nozomi? Outside the door, Niwa Yukino bowed deeply and opened her red lips. Miyamoto-kun, my father has something important to discuss, please follow me. Got it. Shenyu turned his pupils, glanced in a certain direction in the dark, and his lips moved. You have a tail. Yukino understood his lip language, and a trace of sadness passed across her eyebrows. As if she had known about this for a long time, she repeated, please follow me. Shenyu smiled and pushed the door open. The headquarters of the Sword, Niwa Maya's room. The situation is urgent, so I'll get straight to the point. Can you really help us through this crisis? Sir, I'll give you 30% of the shares. Shenyu crossed his arms. Your Chamber of Commerce has no shortage of funds or financial resources, but only a strong enough military deterrent, and I just meet this requirement. Mei hesitated and said, how strong is your strength? To be honest, I don't know how strong I am now. Shenyu's eyes suddenly wandered, and his voice was a little arrogant. If I want to, it shouldn't be difficult to destroy a country. It's actually, to this extent. Mei's hand trembled, and he almost knocked over the tea. He really couldn't imagine that this young man with extraordinary strength in front of him was so low-key. With this thought, he immediately stood up. Since we want to cooperate, then I also have a condition. Until now, we still don't know your true identity. Uchiha Shenyu. Shenyu said softly, don't get me wrong, I have nothing to do with the Uchiha group in Konoha village of the Land of Fire. I am the disciple of Master Madara, Jonfengren. The legendary, Uchiha Madara. Mei couldn't help but take 2 steps back, and Naoko and Yukino hurriedly supported him. He murmured, if you are the disciple of that person, then there is no problem. Knowing Shenyu's origin, he waved his hand and immediately agreed to Shenyu's conditions. Maya said with a burning look, more than that, I promise that if you can get Dan Deosai out of the control of the Iron Country's dignitaries, in addition to the 30% of shares I promised you in advance, I will give up another 20%, and from now on, half of the Chamber of Commerce's annual profits will be given to you. Shenyu looked at Niwa Maya with a serious face, thinking that the old fox wanted to tie me to Dan Deosai completely. We all prosper together and we all suffer together, and when it comes to certain decision-making moments, my 50% of shares are not enough to overturn the balance of interests. I have to say that as a family head and the acting president of the entire Chamber of Commerce, this guy is very bold and courageous. But Shenyu didn't just nod foolishly, but made 3 rules. I can help the Chamber of Commerce solve this crisis of changing ownership, and from now on I will be the supreme force to deter the princes of the Iron Kingdom, but I don't care how the Chamber of Commerce operates or how it expands. I will only help when the Chamber of Commerce encounters a crisis. I am a sharp knife that can kill people or deter people. It's up to you how to use it. Niwa Mayo thought about it carefully and finally agreed. Because the word of the martial arts competition for marriage had been released before, the few people could only take advantage of the situation and let Shenyu take action to show his strength in front of the warriors of the world. But, after hesitating for a long time, Glass whispered, the requirement of this competition is that only samurai can participate. Shenyu-jun, you should be a ninja. Shenyu smiled lightly, don't worry, Even if I don't use ninja methods, I will torture them. At this time, Niwa Maya coughed a few times, gave Shenyu a meaningful look, and said loudly, then, it's settled. If you can win the championship, even if I marry my daughter to you, it's not impossible. Yukino's body trembled slightly, and her red lips pursed slightly under the white silk veil. Shenyu saw it and pretended to be frivolous. Then I'll take my leave now. Maya looked at her daughter. Yukino, go and see him off. Yukino hesitated a little, and seeing her father's eyes, she still moved her lotus steps and left the room with Shenyu. Glass, you go down too. Several people left one after another. Mei leaned back on the bamboo chair, looking at the lonely moon outside the window, with a lonely look, as if he had aged dozens of years in an instant. Less than half an hour later, there was a knock on the door. Come in, Mei sighed. The people who came were his 2 apprentices. Master, you, Ryunosuke hesitated, glanced at his junior brother quickly, and flicked his sleeves. Hey, junior brother, tell me, you want to leave the fate of the Chamber of Commerce to that little devil during the day. I don't understand why you want to trust an outsider. However, Mei ignored him. He just stared at his second disciple. Jai, do you think so too? Jai frowned slightly and said, I also think this is not very rational. Mei snorted coldly. Why, do you think I'm old and confused? Don't dare. Ryunosuke knelt on his knees, not daring to look up. Jai, how did you know about this? Jai didn't answer, but just said, I just don't want Master to be desperate and ruin the Chamber of Commerce's bright future. Jai, stop talking. Ryunosuke widened his eyes, and was shocked by this second apprentice brother. He couldn't understand why this second apprentice brother, who was lazy by nature and didn't like fighting, dared to say such words to the master today. Unexpectedly, the master who was always strict actually chuckled, and didn't seem to care about the rude words of his apprentice. You are one step behind, Tetsuya. The 2 apprentices were stunned at the same time. Maya continued to speak. Ryunosuke, it was you who persuaded me to marry Nishiko. Ryunosuke sweated profusely. It was my little apprentice. Tell me the truth, who told you this plan? No one told my little apprentice, I thought of it myself. Ryunosuke's face turned pale. Niwa Maya walked slowly and came to him. Haha, it's true that you care about the Chamber of Commerce, but with your wooden head, how could you come up with this plan? Quote. Ryunosuke was anxious and wanted to explain, but he couldn't say it. He was a dull person who was not good at speaking. Maya sighed. Even you didn't notice it. Wasn't it your good junior brother who reminded you of this? Ryunosuke was stunned and looked at his junior brother beside him with half belief and half doubt. He vaguely remembered that one night he went to his junior brother to drink alone, and his junior brother did mention that if the only daughter of the Sugawara family could get a good home, it would also relieve the pressure on the Chamber of Commerce a little bit. Could it be? He suddenly remembered what Miyamoto Shenyu asked him to pass on to his master during the day. Your second disciple is not simple. In the room of the president in the fortress. The lights were dim, casting the shadows of 3 men on the wall. Mei continued, when we were hunting down Ikawa Gentaro, few people knew about the action plan. Apart from those who participated in the action, the only one who knew about it was Yukino. He looked up at the ceiling, staring at the bright lights. I am not afraid to tell the truth. I really doubted my own daughter. So, Tetsuya, who had been silent, spoke with a hoarse voice, you chose your own daughter for marriage. Is this just your test? Maya looked him straight in the eyes. Yes. What's the point? Are you really willing to sacrifice Yukino's happiness? Tetsuya's eyes were red. Of course it makes sense. Isn't this catching you? Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Tetsuya's breathing stagnated. Mei put her hands behind her back and said, since I announced the news, Yukino has not been as hysterical as I imagined. Instead, she has accepted it all calmly and only cried secretly at night. She has always been a sensible child. But you, my apprentice, your reaction really surprised me. Not only did you come to me again and again to take back your orders, but you also encouraged the presidents of various departments to undermine my power. In addition, you secretly did those little tricks with those nobles. Do you really think I can't see it? Clues, all kinds of signs. Mei sighed a little disappointedly, and with the reminder of the nobleman, I just remembered that the person who usually gets along closest to Yukino is you, Tetsuya. Tetsuya frowned. Master suspects me. Mayo stared into his eyes. That day, you learned the route from Yukino. I can't think of anyone else who would betray us except you. And, I went to talk to friend Shenyu late at night. How did you know this news? Mayo stepped forward. Or, have you been following Yukino? Could it be that everything you just said was to lure me out? Tetsuya figured it out instantly and said angrily, Niwa Mayo. For the Chamber of Commerce, you really do everything you can. Tetsuya, what are you talking about? Ryunosuke pulled Tetsuya's trouser legs and scolded in a low voice. How can you talk to the master? Kneel down quickly. He glared at his junior brother, but Tetsuya remained indifferent. Tetsuya, you. At this time, Tetsuya suddenly raised his foot and shot Ryunosuke out, smashing the knife rack in the house. Tetsuya's eyes suddenly turned fierce, and he pulled out a wakizashi from his sleeve, stabbing out with the sharp blade. Maya put his hands behind his back, exposing his back defenselessly to Tetsuya, and closed his eyes in disappointment. Ding! Tetsuya's wrist hurt, the blade broke, and a huge black bone palm was placed horizontally behind Maya, separating them like a chasm. A handsome boy stepped out from Maya's side. He didn't know when he appeared there, but the huge black ribs and the huge palm with black air between several people shocked Tetsuya. Shenyu stretched out a hand from a distance and grasped it in the air. Tetsuya felt suffocated, and a terrifying sense of oppression came from his whole body, as if an invisible big hand was holding him tightly, and even moving a finger became a luxury. What is this? He tried his best to open his eyes wide, but his lips could not move at all, and great fear ignited in his eyes. My feeling is right. Shenyu slightly turned his palm, and Tetsuya's body also turned stiffly. Your body is problematic. He suddenly raised his sword finger, and in contrast, Tetsuya's right hand bulged with a big bag, surging like water, spreading along his arm, until his whole body was rippling like water, looking weird and creepy. Disperse! Shenyu shouted. With a puff, Tetsuya's entire right arm suddenly exploded, and liquid splashed all over the wall, and a few droplets even collapsed on Ryunosuke's face. Ryunosuke wiped his face in panic, and then he realized that it was not blood, but transparent water. Shenyu casually withdrew his hand, and Tetsuya's body instantly lost support and knelt on the ground with a thump. Invisible water flowed out of the broken arm, and in a period of wriggling, it turned into the right arm again, and recovered as before. This scene stunned Ryunosuke and shocked Niwa. I'm right, isn't your second disciple a simple one? Shenyu sneered, he's not from the Iron Country at all. In the twisted black air, Mei slowly turned around, with turbid tears running down her eyes. What a pity, Jie, among these three disciples, the one I value the most is you. Kill? Shenyu asked with his head tilted. Yes, Mei nodded calmly, his eyes at this moment calm as an executioner holding a sword. Please leave him a complete body. Understood. Shenyu released Susanoo. The black air dissipated, but a very clear and light spirit shot out and instantly sank into Tetsuya's brow. The next moment, the spirit entered the body and returned. Shenyu's expression suddenly became complicated. He stared at Tetsuya, who had no breath at all, and turned away with his black clothes up and down. Just now, before killing the other party's soul, he tortured him for information as usual. Hozumi Tetsuya, a native of the water country, went undercover into the Niwa family when he was young, in order to plunder the excellent sword forging technology of the Iron Country, and cooperated with the Iron Country nobles who were corrupted by the money of the water country, and eroded the three legends of iron, bit by bit. 3 months ago, he secretly tampered with the forging furnace of the Ikawa family under the pretext of helping others, and replaced the 100 Hands sword forging manual, causing the failure of the forging of the 3,000 famous swords ordered by the daimyo's mansion. After delivery, they were all broken. The daimyo was furious, and the Dan Daosai began to fall apart. He secretly planned to let the Kurigakure village support the desperate Ikawa family, and sent ninjas to snipe the pursuers of the Iron Country. He encouraged the Niwa family to marry off Sugawara's only daughter, and bribed the powerful early on to decide the winner. Until Niwa Maya replaced the person who was married off with his beloved Niwa Yukino. From then on, he began to panic. Announced to participate in the competition. Designed to kill Sugawara Glass. Although it was well concealed, the shrewd Maya still noticed something wrong. If he is not discovered, he will reveal his identity in the next martial arts competition, defeat all the heroes to win the championship, join forces with the bribed dignitaries to annex the Chamber of Commerce, and then wait for an opportunity to assassinate Niwa Maya, completely disintegrate the Three Legends of Iron, and bring it into the hands of the Water Country. The important thing is, he can also marry Niwa Yukino legitimately. Shinyu returned to the room, lying on the bed, staring blankly at the night sky outside the window. I feel a lot. The plan was originally perfect, but because of love, everything was lost. He turned over, facing the cold moonlight, his pupils suddenly glowed red, and the exquisite lines changed in his eyes, and the kaleidoscope opened instantly. He stretched out his hand, and gently stroked his eye sockets with his slender fingertips. Kitten Tetsuya, this boy is very scheming, and his plans are far-reaching. However, no matter how scheming he is, no matter how sinister his calculations are, they can never escape my eyes. The troubled times are coming, and strength is everything. In the face of absolute power, all schemes seem so ridiculous. Shenyu stared at his palm and muttered to himself, is this the feeling of controlling other people's fate? That night, he tossed and turned, unable to concentrate. Compared to the world-minded Lord Madara, I am still far behind. On the second day, the martial arts competition started as usual. But to everyone's surprise, a young man stepped onto the stage early that day. He was wearing a black brocade robe with violet flower patterns, which made him look noble. His long black hair was combed into a high ponytail, and the end of his hair was tied with an indigo rope. A slender divine sword hung from his waist. He stood in the center of the stage with slow movements. A soft and beautiful face, with indifferent phoenix eyes, and a cold, arrogant and lonely domineering aura. More and more spectators gathered in the audience, and there were also some rough people who had seen blood, and they also showed impatience, but when they saw the boy's eyes, they shut up and dared not breathe. Only the warriors in the crowd showed cautious eyes, leaned over, put their palms on the hilt of the sword, and unconsciously entered a defensive posture. What's going on? This kid's momentum. However, the dignitaries in the stands could not sit still, and some began to grin. They were high up and far away, so they couldn't see the boy's expression clearly. Where did this little brat come from? Are you looking for death? HMPH, what's wrong with the Niwa clan? How can we let this little brat mess up such an important occasion? Someone, get him out of here. Haha, those guys in the audience can't even handle a little brat. Soon, a man in samurai armor stepped onto the stage and scolded Shenyu from behind. Little brat, go play somewhere else, this is not the place for you. Shenyu tilted his head slightly, are you here to challenge me? Challenge, the man sneered, you little brat, don't you want to participate in the martial arts competition? Shenyu said indifferently, I'll give you 3 breaths, get out of here by yourself. Someone in the stands began to shout, are you ready? The competition is about to start. Can you stop this little brat from messing up? Really, the Niwa family can't even do this. On the stage, the man was also a little embarrassed. He put one hand on the hilt of the knife, his eyes sharp. Little brat, if you don't leave, don't blame me for taking action. 3 breaths have passed. Shenyu disappeared from the spot, and the man only saw a shadow flashing above his head, and a slender palm lightly rested on his shoulder. Immediately, under the pull of a huge force, his vision spun around, and the young man actually threw him out with one hand. The man turned into a straight long line and smashed into a certain position in the stands with a bang. A burst of crying and screaming came from above, and the screams were the loudest there just now. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. The powerful and noble were all shocked, and some even stood up directly, looking at the main seat in surprise, but Niwa Mayo squinted his eyes calmly, and the people in the entire Chamber of Commerce were unusually calm, as if they didn't care about this matter at all. President Niwa, I need an explanation. A pot-bellied, wealthy noble said in a deep voice. Today is a martial arts competition. Only the strongest person can become my son-in-law. Fighting is inevitable. Mei showed a cunning smile, swords have no eyes. It's normal to accidentally hurt 1 or 2 people occasionally. HMPH. The noble snorted coldly, and it was not easy to get angry. He could only mutter in his mouth, wait until this is over, I will make you pay. On the high platform, the daimyo of the Iron Country sat in the canopy of the Chonglo, with a folding fan covering half of his face, revealing a thoughtful look. On the ring, Shenyu looked down on everyone, and his cold eyes slowly swept the whole audience. I know why you are here today, but I just think the process of this competition is too boring. He raised the corners of his mouth and raised a wicked smile. Let me simplify the process for you. If you want to marry Miss Shueno, it's very simple. Go up on the stage and kill me. His eyes were extremely aggressive and his momentum was majestic. My name is Shenyu. Today, I will defend the ring. As soon as these words came out, all the warriors present could not sit still. What these people couldn't stand the most was such words. The heart of a swordsman is to be invincible. Everyone is rushing forward. In order to achieve greater success in kendo, they will stick to their own way, implement their own beliefs, and will not be afraid of strong enemies. The dust on the sword heart is fatal. Just imagine, if you don't even believe in yourself, how can you believe in the sword in your hand? Therefore, many warriors snorted coldly, and a few bloody people couldn't help but curse. A hot-tempered warrior jumped onto the ring and looked at Shenyu coldly. My name is. The voice stopped abruptly, because the next second he flew out of the ring and was embedded in the wall with a bang, and he couldn't get out. Everyone swallowed their saliva and turned their eyes back to the ring. They saw Shenyu maintaining a standard side kick posture and slowly retracting his legs. Don't waste your time, you trash. Shenyu glanced at the crowd. I'll give you a piece of advice. This is the last time I will show mercy. Whoever comes up next, be determined to die. A stone stirs up 1,000 waves, and there is a burst of shouting on and off the stage. This is not cheering, but a mixture of vulgar and indignant shouting. Little devil, don't look down on me. Tell me your master, and I will definitely go to ask for an explanation. Do you really think there is no one in Takeo Castle? Let me play with you. No, let me come, my sword has been thirsty for a long time. HMPH, let me, Fubuki Ryu, come and experience the weight of you little devil. Shenyu bathed in the sound waves and opened his hands. No need to be so troublesome, you all come together. Arrogant. Immediately, 3 warriors came on the stage and surrounded Shenyu. This time there was no nonsense. They took the lead, and the sword light flashed like a streak of silk. 3 chakra air blades flew out diagonally and chopped Shenyu's body. Buzz. Everyone opened their mouths wide, because they saw with their own eyes that the boy's body suddenly rippled with translucent waves, like a spring, and all the air blades flew out. With a swoosh, Shenyu's hand grasped the handle of the sword, and the blade light was as clear as flowing water, flashing through everyone's eyes. The 3 samurai's swords were cut off, and they flew out of the ring with flying hot blood. When everyone reacted, Frost's heart had already returned to the sheath. What? Such a fast sword. Compared to this, the defensive skills that this boy just showed are even more outrageous. Hey, what is that? Did you see it clearly? The audience was talking about it, and Shenyu's stunning defensive counterattack once again ignited the venue. With the special ability of Poseidon's body, he can not only control the water flow in the ocean, but also use the water molecules in the air to condense them on the surface of the body to create a high-density protective barrier. This water molecule shield has extremely strong toughness, because it is transparent and almost invisible. This ability can be controlled subjectively or it can be a subconscious reaction. The body will automatically condense water molecules before being attacked to resist damage. If you want to break this water shield, it is obviously not a good idea to hit it with a blunt weapon. Only a concentrated stab or slash is possible. But these warriors' slashes are too weak. They can't even break the shield, let alone touch his more powerful body. Trash, trash, why are they all trash? Shenyu frowned slightly. If you are weaker than these 3, don't come to die. The Iron Country, the Swordsmith Chamber of Commerce. In the venue, Shenyu stood steadily in the center of the ring. Blood was splattered all around him, countless broken swords and limbs were scattered all over the ring, and the pungent smell of blood lingered for a long time. Whether on the stage or off the stage, everyone was silent. This killing god-like boy has been standing here for more than 10 hours. From morning to dusk, countless warriors and heroes came one after another, but all of them were defeated here. At the end of the battle, no one dared to shout anymore, and some people didn't even dare to breathe. The whole process of the competition seemed to have turned into a fake fighting scene. Those warriors they once admired were completely chickens and dogs in front of the boy, and they were vulnerable. It's not that the boy's sword skills are so gorgeous and unfathomable. On the contrary, the boy even stood there and let them chop, crushing all the warriors with the simplest attitude. No matter you are a master who can handle everything on your own or you are surrounded by more than a dozen people, the boy is unmoved, and those sharp sword energy cannot hurt him at all. Finally, the boy will sigh with disappointment, swing a simple sword slash, and everyone will fall to the ground like harvested wheat, bleeding and defeated. Strong warriors will break their swords, and slightly weaker ones may lose part of their bodies, and those who are famous in vain will leave their lives there forever. What? No one. Shen Yu spoke, and his cool voice passed through the venue, breaking the silence. He looked around at everyone, his expression could not hide his disappointment. From the beginning to the end, he was looking for someone who could break the water molecule barrier, because only this kind of sharp and unparalleled slashing was worthy of him to adapt. His most fundamental purpose was to adapt to the slashing and then evolve his autumn dew on leaves. But he didn't expect that in the dignified Iron Country, no one could catch his eye. Mr. Maya, can you announce the result? He looked towards the main seat. Ahem. Niwa Maya stood up with the help of his crutches, cleared his throat, and announced, Shenyu is here to defend the ring. Since no one dares to challenge him, I declare that the winner of today's martial arts competition is Shen. Wait. At this time, a shrill voice interrupted him. Maya looked up in astonishment and looked at the daimyo of the Iron Country on the high platform. Haha, I can't believe that my Iron Country has produced such a young hero. Not bad, really good. The daimyo clapped his hands as if no one was around. Then, the applause was thunderous. Under the leadership of this person in power, both the dignitaries and the common people began to applaud. The applause gradually became sparse, and the daimyo also smiled and opened his folding fan. Maya, today's champion must be this young man. I believe everyone has seen it, so there is no need to announce it so early. Ah, daimyo is right. Maya nodded with a smile. Then, I have an unwelcome request. I wonder if Brother Shenyu can agree to it, asked the daimyo. Shenyu said casually, speak. The air suddenly stagnated, and everyone in the venue, including Maya, saw Shenyu's disrespect for the daimyo, but no one dared to say anything more. The daimyo smiled nonchalantly. There are 4 warriors in my daimyo mansion. Before you were born, they were considered the 4 strongest in the Iron Country. Although they are over 50 years old, their swords are not rusty. He spoke in a rhythmic manner, with a shrill voice, as if listening to an old nursery rhyme. So, can you please help me test them, to see if they still have the edge? This, Mayo heard it and felt uneasy. However, just as he was about to when he refused. Okay. Shen Yu's tone was also excited, and his calm eyes regained some brilliance. Come on, don't spoil my fun. Great. Daimyo was also very happy, and snapped his folding fan. I sent people to invite them out of the mountain a long time ago, and they have been waiting here for a long time. Behind him, 4 people appeared, 1 tall and 1 short, 1 fat and 1 thin. Their figures became illusory for a moment, and they were already standing on the ring, surrounding Shen Yu in the middle. They pulled off their shawls, revealing their uniform white beards and wrinkled faces. Although time has corroded their bodies, it cannot corrode their sword hearts. Those 4 bright and sharp eyes are the best evidence. Haha, don't worry, Miss Yukino. Even if they win by chance, I won't let you marry them. The daimyo glanced at the worried Yukino and said with a smile, how can I bear to let you, a lady of the Dan Daosai, commit yourself to a few old men? Swords have no eyes, little brother, be careful. The tall old man said. Shen Yudin hand on the knife, please teach me. Swish. As soon as the voice fell, 4 fierce slashes fell and chopped on Shenyu. There was a loud buzzing sound, but Shenyu still did not move. The water shield on his body vibrated frequently, and immediately bounced the slashes away and shot into the sky. However, the offensive of the old warriors did not end. They exchanged their lower body positions tacitly, and swung the single knife like splashing ink, drawing a cross slash in the air and breaking through the air. Shenyu simply opened his hands and slashed densely. Under the dim sunset, the light blue halo reflected Shenyu's body brightly. In Shenyu's surprised eyes, the water molecule barrier on his upper body flashed wildly and finally shattered, and the slash came to him in an instant. Swish, swish, swish. His robe was torn into thousands of pieces of cloth in an instant, revealing his flawless upper body. The four old men took a breath of cold air. What did they see? The young man was bathed in the light of the slash. The seemingly sharp and unparalleled slash did not cause any harm to the young man. His upper body was like a piece of divine iron, and the blue light flowed, looking like a smooth and delicate piece of jade. In shock, the old warriors did not stop their offensive. Countless slashes were like waves, completely submerging Shen Yu. That's it, that's it. You four, give it a try. Shen Yu laughed wildly, and his laughter could not hide his excitement. Since the water molecule barrier in his upper body had been shattered, there was no need to maintain it. Only by experiencing the damage personally can he adapt faster. Mo Shu Luo. In the bright blue light, a ray of red light shot out from his eyes, and the biting coldness rushed into the sky. Everyone seemed to have an illusion of being on an iceberg, and shuddered in unison. Shen Yu's left eye has turned into a kaleidoscope, beautiful and magnificent. The pattern of the magic circle rotates gently, as if every knife and every slash is imprinted into his mind. Chakra, shape change, extreme compression, water is surging, endless. Slashing outward, self-contained, one body. In an instant, Shen Yu's pupils flashed, and the frost heart in his right hand instantly came out of his body. The blue light in his left hand gathered and quickly condensed into an ice-blue blade, releasing a brilliance like 10,000 years of black ice. He held the sword in his hand and turned around suddenly. Double sword slash. The light of autumn dew on leaves was condensed like substance, completely turning from ice blue to jade green. Shen Yu's blade drew a perfect circle, the arc was emerald green and shiny, and it suddenly expanded. At this moment, all the slashes pale in comparison to this arc. It is as powerful as a bamboo, easily cutting off all the slashes and acting on the blades of the warriors, sweeping past like a breeze. Ding, 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 ding. This is the sound of the broken sword falling to the ground. The four old warriors spit out blood, their hair and beards are fluttering, and they fall from the ring in a flash. Shen Yu sheathed his sword, and the blade of light in his left hand extinguished like a ghost fire. He stood on the ring, and his proud eyes swept over the four old warriors one by one. They did not die. Shen Yu slashed according to their chakra strength, but each of them had a deep knife scar on his chest. This scar, I left it, this will be the last glory of your life. His voice spread throughout the venue, making the noisy venue instantly audible. It was as if an invisible hand appeared in the air, fiercely grabbing everyone's throat. The daimyo of the Iron Country was stunned, and didn't even notice that his folding fan had fallen. Everyone looked at the boy on the ring in shock, who looked like a god or demon descending to the world. The silent shock echoed in everyone's heart. This was destined to be recorded in the history of the Iron Country. Haha, little brother is really a genius. The daimyo praised with a smile, but the smile was a little bitter. Niwa Maya observed the situation and took the opportunity to announce Shen Yu's championship. Everyone was filled with emotion and amazed that a godlike boy appeared in the Iron Country today. Suddenly, a sharp-eyed warrior found that Shen Yu's right hand moved. Without any warning, Frost's heart suddenly came out of the sheath, and the powerful slash tore the air, splitting a distant stand in half, and the house collapsed, burying the dignitaries inside. Swish, swish, swish. The screams did not stop. Shen Yu continued to draw his sword, and every time he slashed, there was a slash across the sky. The jade-green streamer was like a huge crescent moon, rushing straight to several dignitaries and breaking through the air. Not good. Crazy, crazy. That boy is crazy. The green light flashed, as powerful as thunder, making the dim sky flicker. The souls of the nobles were all gone, no one could be faster than such a slash. The warriors around them wanted to draw their swords to resist, but they were all cut in two by the slash and became the burial objects of their masters. After the evolution, autumn dew on the leaves perfected the operation of chakra. While having the characteristics of water circulation, it also greatly compressed the density of chakra, which can be released from a distance and defend against enemies at close range, completely breaking free from the confinement of the hands. In a creepy, puff sound, blood flowed into a river, and the original stands turned into a slaughterhouse in the boy's mind. You know, these are all powerful people in the Iron Kingdom, who can call the wind and rain, but Shenyu killed them one by one in front of the daimyo. There was chaos in the field, and crying everywhere. Ah, is this also Niwa-maya's conspiracy? Help me, I'm so handsome, I don't want to die here. From the time Shenyu drew his sword to the death of the dignitaries, it only took a few breaths. Everyone rushed to escape, fearing that the young man's butcher knife would fall on their heads. Are you kidding? That was a ruthless man who defeated the 4 strongest samurai in a snap of his fingers. There has not been one in hundreds of years. If he goes crazy, I'm afraid the entire Takeo castle will be buried with those dignitaries who just died. At this time, Shenyu spoke, and his clear voice spread throughout the venue again. Everyone, don't move. The people I just killed were all scums bought by the water country. All this was done at the instruction of the daimyo. Now all the criminals have been executed, and you don't have to worry. Under the canopy of the high platform, the daimyo of the Iron Country, who was hiding behind several shogunate samurai and buried his head deeply under the chair, trembled and carefully poked his head out. Ah, his eyes were filled with fear, doubt, and a little panic. Me. At this time, Niwa-maya stood up, and with the help of Naoko and Yukino, she quickly came to the daimyo. Dear daimyo, the culprit of everything that happened today is the water country. He talked eloquently, and with his outstanding eloquence, he quickly told the spies of the water country who were undercover in the Iron Country, the 3 legends of iron, that were eroded by despicable means, and the secret manipulation of the competition by the water country. He explained that the failure of the Ikawa family to forge the sword and the attack on the shogunate army were all conspiracies of the water country. The daimyo regained his composure, climbed back onto the chair, and took out a small handkerchief to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. Maya explained beside him, and he sat there obediently and listened, occasionally glancing at Shenyu holding the Yushin sword on the ring. There was no way. If the young man chopped him off with a frown, he would have nowhere to complain. At this moment, a collapsed house somewhere suddenly moved, and a figure suddenly emerged from the broken walls. He was like a ghost. As soon as he appeared, he shot towards the daimyo and Maya, who were sitting on the main seat, at a fast speed and with great momentum. It's an assassin. The 2 guards reacted quickly and immediately blocked the daimyo. Draw your sword and cut. They drew their swords at the same time, and 2 light blue sword auras crossed each other in the air and went straight to the man's body. The assassin did not dodge or avoid, as if he did not see the sword aura at all, and rushed straight up. Everyone frowned. You know, not everyone is as evil as Shenyu. The samurai's slashing is the pride of this country, but today it has been ignored again and again. The novel was taken from the Raleigh's website. Close where you're reading it and support us on our website for more free novels. It's okay for Shenyu. After all, this is a strong man they witnessed with their own eyes, but you, an unknown assassin who jumped out of nowhere, dared to ignore the slash. This is tantamount to trampling on their dignity, over and over again. The sword energy whizzed past and penetrated the man's body directly, but saw tiny splashes of water. Not only did he not suffer any damage, but he raised his hands and made a pistol gesture. Water escape water iron cannon. The assassin's fingertips flashed, and 2 crystal water droplets shot out, piercing the bodies of the 2 guards in an instant. However, the daimyo's guards were fearless and their dignity could not be trampled upon. Before the 2 guards fell completely, more guards rushed up and blocked the daimyo and Niwa-maya behind them. It's so boring, the man complained, and fired with both hands. Countless water bullets shot in all directions, launching an indiscriminate attack. Shenyu closed his eyes slightly to concentrate his mind. At this moment, with him as the center, an invisible wave suddenly swayed. All the water droplets paused in the air, and the momentum instantly returned to 0, falling like raindrops, pat pat. What the hell? The attacker was also shocked, but now was not the time to be shocked. Time was running out. As long as they killed the daimyo of the Iron Country and this hateful Niwa-maya, it would be worth the trip. Anyway, they had obtained the 100 hands of the Ichikawa family. Although they failed to complete the Iron 3 Chuan collapse plan, as long as these 2 died, the best swordsmith in the entire ninja world would belong to the water country forever. Thinking of this, he immediately activated the instant body technique, leaving a faint afterimage in the air. His right hand instantly expanded several times, slapping away all the guards, and the other hand reaching towards the daimyo. Just as his fingertips were about to touch the daimyo, a breeze blew in front of him, and a young man appeared in front of him in an instant, raising his palm to slap him on the chest. This palm was as fast as lightning, and there was no way to avoid it. However, for him, there was no difference between avoiding and not avoiding. As long as he turned his body into water, he could ignore all physical damage. A strange feeling came over him, and the assassin's pupils shrank. His original disdainful expression disappeared immediately, turning into great fear. How could it be impossible to turn into water? Nothing is impossible. Shen Yu spoke calmly, and the assassin's body seemed to be imprisoned in midair, and the panicked and frightened expression also solidified on his face. This man had fair skin, slender cheeks, a flaxen side-parted oily hair, and a signature mustache around his mouth. The most noticeable thing was that this guy had no eyebrows. It turned out to be you. Shen Yu smiled leisurely. Ghost Lantern Wanyu. Quote, the assassin forced a stiff smile. Do you know me? An acquaintance. Of course I know him, the future second-generation Mizukage. How could I not know a man who was so good at water escape and who used a unique and powerful secret technique to perish together with the bloodline elimination of the Hidden Rock Village? Hazuka Genjutsu, the second-generation Mizukage of the original time and space. During his tenure, this guy not only imitated the second-generation Hokage Tobirama to establish the Kurigakure ninja school in the Anbu, but also formulated a law to keep the secrets of the Kurigakure village, stipulating that the Kurigakure ninja must protect their own information, not to mention the enemy, even companions cannot leak it. This also led to the Kurigakure ninja being too mysterious, and even the younger generations of the Kurigakure village did not understand the strength of this Mizukage. Not only that, he paid great attention to the inheritance of ninja swords. The famous 7 ninja swordsmen started from him. He regarded these 7 people who inherited the ninja swords as direct subordinates of the Mizukage, and trained a large number of new generation ninjas as members of the 7 ninja swordsmen, effectively consolidating the development of the village. Shen Yu curled his lips. Who knows you? He clenched his fist slightly, and Hazuka Genjutsu's body was shattered like being torn apart by a car. Except for a head, other parts turned into gurgling water balls, and the flesh and blood liquid became transparent, which looked extremely weird. What abilities do you have, little brat? Wanyu bared his teeth, trying to hide the fear in his eyes. Shen Yu looked at him leisurely. The Ghost Lantern clan has a physique that can recover even if their heads are blown off. I wonder if they can recover if they are decomposed into molecules. I really haven't died. Wanyu interrupted herself immediately and exclaimed, no. Who are you? Why do you know me so well? Do you think you have the qualifications to ask questions? Shen Yu raised his chin, and a ball of water around Wanyu immediately expanded and exploded, dispersing into a ball of water vapor with a pop sound, and the air became much more humid. Hey, don't be impulsive. Wanyu was frightened, staring at another ball of water that was gradually expanding, sweating profusely. Brother, if you have anything to ask, just ask, I will answer everything I know. He forced himself to make a flattering expression, and his eyes never left the ball of water. That's my lower body, it will take a long time to fully recover. Tell me your identity, purpose, and why you want to assassinate the daimyo. Shen Yu's expression turned cold, and he recalled the tone of Madara-sama when he spoke, and he unconsciously became more majestic. Hazuka Wanyu pulled the corner of his mouth and said depressedly, I, Hazuka Wanyu, am the direct disciple of the Mizukage of the Water Country, the Hidden Mist Village. I came here to snatch the 3 Legends of Iron from the Iron Country. The assassination is also one of the necessary means to achieve this goal. How humiliating, little devil, I will kill you when I untie you. Shen Yu nodded to Mei and continued to ask, why do you want to seize the 3 Legends of Iron? What conspiracy do you have in the Water Country? Tell me quickly. Shen Yu hooked his finger, and a ball of water suddenly burst, shattering into foam in front of Wanyu's eyes. Stop, isn't that enough? Huan Yu shouted with a trembling voice. The Hidden Mist Village needs swordsmiths, especially. But the best swordsmiths in the ninja world are all gathered here. I have an idea. If we can combine ninjutsu with samurai sword forging techniques to create a unique ninja sword, then our village will definitely become stronger. There's more. This plan was planned by me. All the actions were my own ideas. It has nothing to do with the hidden mist village. Even the teacher was kept in the dark by me. Shen Yu said thoughtfully, nodding. What did you do to complete this plan? Wan Yu said helplessly. I had this idea a long time ago, but there, 3 legends of iron, are united and have established a chamber of commerce. If you want to disintegrate them, you can only start from the inside. Therefore, many years ago I sent the most trusted confidant of the family to disguise as a member of the Iron Country and insert him into the Chamber of Commerce, in order to alienate them one day. Until yesterday I couldn't get any news from him. Well, I killed him. Shen Yu said calmly. It turned out to be you. At this time, Niwa Mei suddenly spoke, her voice full of resentment. You said you did these things behind the back of the Mizukage, but how did you mobilize the ninjas of the Hidden Mist Village? On the day of the incident, there were many powerful ninjas who attacked us and the Shogunate army. Tisk, Wan Yu curled her lips in disdain. Shen Yu said coldly, answer his question. Huan Yu immediately opened his mouth. You are talking about that, those are just mercenaries organized by wandering ninjas and killers. As long as you are willing to pay, they can do anything. I can guarantee that except for me and my confidants, no one from the Hidden Mist Village is involved in the whole plan. Kill you, kill you. He stared at Shen Yu's fingers, really scared. Mr. Daimyo, do you understand now? The daimyo sat in a daze on the chair, with a shocked face throughout the whole process. Now, he didn't have to believe it. So that's how it is. I didn't expect that my Iron Country, which was originally a neutral country, actually had so many spies lurking in it. The daimyo was very angry. Besides being angry, he was also moved by finding a good minister. He cried with tears in his eyes. Luckily, Maya-kun is resourceful. Great is Shenyu-kun's divine power. The 2 of you turned the tide and saved the country from danger, which prevented the shame of my Iron Country. Sir Shenyu, please kill this beast immediately. The daimyo pointed at Wanyu and shouted in a shrill voice. Shenyu smiled slightly and disappeared with Hazuka Wanyu. He was very fast. Wanyu felt that he was running fast and the surrounding environment was moving rapidly. He had been taken out of the city by Shenyu. Little mustache, I don't hate you, go back. Shenyu smiled and let go. The invisible restraints were untied. Huan Yu immediately merged with several large water balls around him, and a complete person stood up wetly. Little mustache. Huan Yu's face was livid, and he immediately moved away from Shen Yu, jumping hundreds of meters away with a few jumps. Because he could feel that as long as he left the boy's range, the strange restraint would become weaker and weaker. Little ghost, I was careless just now. I will return the humiliation I suffered just now to you now. He made seals with his hands and slapped the ground heavily. Spiritual magic. When the white smoke dissipated, he stood high on a huge clam. The shell was white all over, and 2 fleshy tentacles protruded from the gap. Magic steaming tower. Squeak squeak. The tentacles squirmed, and a huge amount of thick fog was sprayed out from the breathing hole, which covered the area of 1,000 meters in a blink of an eye, including Shenyu, who had been standing there with a strange look. Are you scared, kid? I am an illusion ninja. Everything you see in this mirage is an illusion. Single quote. The thick fog quickly dissipated, and Wanyu and his big clam still stood in the same place without moving, but in fact, these were all illusions created by illusions, and his real body was moving stealthily. He did not choose to approach Shenyu, but moved forward in a roundabout way and hid behind a huge rock. That kid can control water. Although I don't know what kind of strange ninjutsu he is, I can't approach him rashly. So, how about a large-scale bubble attack? Single quote. The ground under his feet suddenly became wet, and countless bubbles of all sizes emerged and floated towards Shenyu. Water ball technique. Explosion. He snapped his fingers. The sky-high explosion sounded, and when he looked over, Shenyu was still standing there unscathed, tilting his head to look at his phantom clone. Huan Yu's forehead was covered with cold sweat. What the hell? Can you be immune to bubble attacks? There's nothing I can do, I'll use my Joki Boy to deal with you. Single quote. Joki Boy. This is the infinite explosion ninjutsu he developed, which uses the oil and water in the body to create a child-shaped clone, which is very agile. The outer shape is oil, and the inside is water. It is extremely easy to heat and cool. Once it moves, the oil on the surface will be rapidly heated, causing the water inside to evaporate, and the size of the clone will become larger and larger, finally causing a violent water vapor explosion. After the explosion, the water vapor rises and encounters cold, turning into hail to cool and reduce the volume, and the clone recondenses to prepare for the next explosion, which can be repeated infinitely. In the original time and space, he relied on this unique skill to perish together with the caster of dust escape. Hazuka Wanyu hid behind the stone, raised his hand to form a seal, and the chakra slowly accumulated. The steam around him rose and gradually formed a smiling clown face. "What are you doing?" The sudden voice scared Wanyu, and the water oil clone that was about to take shape seemed to be out of control and collapsed directly. "Wow, you, Wanyu trembled with his back against the boulder, raised his head tremblingly, and looked up. I saw Shenyu squatting on the stone, looking down at him leisurely in a cat and mouse posture. I don't know when it appeared, but it seems to have been there all the time. Wanyu subconsciously wanted to run, but unfortunately, this bondage came again, and the mighty force came over. He was lifted up in the air, and his whole belly swelled into a water ball. "No, impossible," he said in disbelief. "Aren't you fooled by my mirage? How can you find my true self? I am not only a water-style ninja, but also a master of illusion." "So," Shenyu said, pointing to his eyes, "you are completely defeated by me." A flash of red light, he showed the three Magatama Sharingan, the black jade-like lines flowed in the bloody red background, Wanyu couldn't help but stare. "You, Uchiha." He was completely confused. Shenyu narrowed his eyes. "Little mustache, I said I don't hate you, but that doesn't mean I won't kill you." Quote. The cold murderous intent flashed across his face, and Wanyu's face immediately became solemn. "I'll spare you this time, but there won't be a next time. Be self-aware, idiot." He casually let go of his hand, and Wanyu immediately fell to the ground, looking very embarrassed. "If you dare to attack the Chamber of Commerce again, I promise to go to the Hidden Mist Village and kill you in front of the Mizukage." "Isn't this not right?" Wanyu panted. "Why do you want to protect the Iron Country? Aren't you from Konoha?" With a puff, Wanyu's head exploded instantly, and water droplets scattered like rain. "Don't mention that name in front of me," Shenyu said in a stern tone. "I'm not a saint. Like you, I'm just a robber who took advantage of the fire, a fool who forcibly seized benefits from the Iron Country, but my way is more elegant than yours." Quote. He turned around and no longer cared about Wanyu's life or death. "Go away, I won't care about the affairs of the Ikawa family, and don't set foot in the Iron Kingdom again." He used the instant body to disappear on the spot, leaving only Hozumi Wanyu sitting on the ground. The water flow gathered at Wanyu's neck, gradually condensing into an eyebrowless, frightened face. Chapter 51. Shenyu returned to the venue. Facing the earnest question of the daimyo, he shook his head and said with regret. "Ah, that guy has many tricks. I fought him for 300 rounds, but he still escaped." The daimyo's face turned black on the spot. Shenyu put his hands on the back of his head and said calmly, "But after all, I am also a member of the Chamber of Commerce now. As long as I am here, our Chamber of Commerce will be here. As long as our Chamber of Commerce is here, that guy will not dare to attack the Iron Country. Do you understand?" The daimyo nodded immediately. How could he not see what Shenyu meant? This was an opportunity to put pressure on the daimyo's mansion. The matter of Hazuka Wanyu was actually very troublesome to deal with. He had just said that this was all his own behavior and had nothing to do with the Water Country. This meant that tracing it to the end would not bring any good results. Regardless of whether Wanyu's words were true or false, even if it was really a conspiracy of the Hidden Mist Village, at most they would make a heroic move and insist that Hazuka Wanyu was a traitor. What else could the Iron Country do? If it really came to light, it would mean a complete rift with the Land of Water. They were just a neutral country, and it was fine to be bullied at ordinary times. If they angered the other party, they would be dragged into the category of hostile countries if they were not careful. Although the ninja god was maintaining peace in the ninja world, who knew how many years he could live? The way Shenyu proposed to deal with it not only saved the Dan Tosai, but also maintained the last bit of dignity of the Iron Country, deterring powerful enemies from invading, which was already quite good. Moreover, he could also establish a relationship with this killer embryo. The daimyo wiped the sweat from the tip of his nose and prepared to restrain the dignitaries when he returned, not allowing them to have any ideas about Dan Tosai. He also mobilized samurai from the shogunate to garrison the headquarters and major branches at all times to protect the safety of the Chamber of Commerce and provide strong support for the vigorous development of Dan Tosai. There is no way, after all, a part of it was taken away by the water country. If he doesn't support it, I'm afraid that the world will call him incompetent. Just like that, Shenyu solved the crisis of the change of ownership of the Chamber of Commerce, preserved the inheritance of the last line of the Three Legends of Iron, and successfully became a shareholder of the Chamber of Commerce. Considering his outstanding contribution, Niwa wanted to retire on the spot. After Shenyu's repeated refusals, they created a new position tailored for Shenyu. No need to participate in the management, enjoy dividends at the end of the year, just take action in the crisis and save the building from collapse. Respectful title, Helmsman. Everyone in the Chamber of Commerce, regardless of their position, regardless of gender, age or youth, must respectfully address Shenyu as young master. With only a piece of Helmsman order, cast in fine gold, all resources of the branches of the Iron Country can be mobilized. In the early morning, a light snow fell on Takeo Castle. Shenyu stretched himself after finishing his training, and pushed open the door, only to see a beautiful figure in front of him. Niu Yukino, wearing a plain white dress, stood in the stands to admire the plum blossoms. Falling snow, plum blossoms, and beautiful women are all the most beautiful things in the painter's pen. Now they are put together, and they are even more beautiful. Shenyu resisted the urge to disturb him, and was about to retreat back into the house, but Yukino called him. Shenyu-jun, are you leaving today? The gentle voice can make people feel like spring breeze even in a cold country. Shenyu exhaled, adjusted his expression slightly, and turned around with a smile. Yes, I still have my mission, and I have to complete it. If there is one person in the entire Iron Country who he least wants to face, it is the woman in front of him. He has killed so many people, and his hands are already stained with blood, but he is open and honest, and has a clear conscience. So far, he does not feel sorry for anyone, nor does he feel that he has owed anyone. But once he thought of this lonely figure and that broken look, he couldn't help but feel uncomfortable. The reason was that he had killed her childhood sweetheart with his own hands. Don't leave, just stay here. She looked at Shenyu. Her eyes were gentle and erratic, and she said softly, just stay here. Shenyu turned his head away and didn't look into her eyes. Those eyes were like a ball of fire, burning all the indifference in his heart, leaving only compassion and guilt. For the first time in his life, he, a pure-blooded Uchiha, didn't dare to look anyone in the eye. Seeing that he didn't answer, Shueno gently took off her veil, revealing her pretty face. Her eyes were warm like water, and her red lips were tender and juicy. She whispered, Shenyu-jun is like a gust of wind, coming and going in a hurry, but if you stay here, even the Chamber of Commerce will be yours sooner or later. Shenyu thought to himself that even if I don't stay here, the Chamber of Commerce will also be mine. Oh, yes, I seem to have won the championship of the martial arts competition, and even you will be mine. Miss Shui now is joking, don't you know that the wind is free and unrestrained? Besides, he looked at the gray the sky, watching the snowflakes slowly falling. I have something to think about in the distance. Yukino pursed her lips, only silent, but her pair of sparkling eyes stubbornly stared at his handsome and gentle profile. Shenyu took a deep breath, turned his head and looked at her. Do you hate me for what happened to Tetsuya Hazuka? No more. Hehe, it seems that I did hate you. Yukino puffed up her lips. She had always been dignified and quiet, but she rarely showed the attitude of a little girl. After all, he is the one who grew up with me. Well, he is also the one who wants your father's life. Shenyu nodded, finishing the knife without mercy. White cut black, Uchiha has always been like this. What's the point of hating me? I've said it before, I'm just a knife, a sharp knife. Your father used my knife to kill Jaya in order to protect the Chamber of Commerce from falling into the hands of the enemy. It's that simple. If father can care less about the Chamber of Commerce, if the Chamber of Commerce is not that important. Be careful with your words. Shenyu immediately said, do you think your father didn't feel heartbroken when I killed Jaya? Love between young people is not worth mentioning in the face of major issues. If the Gui Lantern clan really gets rid of the Chamber of Commerce, the Iron Country will not be far from being destroyed. What major issues? It's nothing more than the interests of more people, Yukino whispered. You're right. Shen Yu stretched out his hand and watched the snowflakes melt in his palm little by little. In this bad world, only strength is the most important. With strength, your interests are the interests of the world, and the people you want to protect are the people the world wants to protect. When you speak, no one dares not care. So, in order to protect the people you want to protect, you must fight and rob. If I didn't fight or rob, I would have been killed when I first went to the battlefield at the age of 4. Shen Yu's voice seemed to have no temperature. If I were to choose again, I would still kill Tetsuya Hazuka because he blocked my way. If you want to seek revenge on me, you are welcome at any time. I will give you a chance. After saying this, he turned and left. The matter was resolved satisfactorily. Shen Yu also performed the summoning technique and kept the ninja cat Zesuke in forged swords, repeatedly admonishing him. Once the Chamber of Commerce encounters a crisis, you will let Zesuke summon me and agree to any conditions. Just as Shen Yu was about to set off to return to the Land of Fire, Zesuke brought him good news. Pochi is back. I told him about you. He said he has prepared the reverse summoning technique and can use it at any time, meow. Oh, Zesuke, you are really my favorite ninja cat. Remember to prepare the reverse summoning technique too. Kamyu immediately formed a seal and disappeared completely in a puff of white smoke. The surrounding scenery changed drastically. When he came to his senses, he was already in the cat house. Fire Country, cat house. Shen Yu closed his eyes tightly and took a deep breath of the air in the house. A mixture of mint and a faint fishy smell floated into his nose. He opened his eyes and his eyes were full of joy. I'm finally back. Slurp. A big tongue covered with barbs suddenly licked his side face. Shen Yu shuddered on the spot. Although his body responded to the stress and opened the water molecule barrier at the first time, the feeling was still disgusting. He quickly turned his head and looked at Pochi's blue cat face. Well, you seem different. Pochi spoke first. Shen Yu looked disgusted, and the goosebumps all over his body had not subsided. It's indeed different, but I don't like your confirmation method. Pochi seemed to have heard nothing, sniffing around Shen Yu, and stretched out his claws to poke the frost heart hanging on his waist, and the cat's face was full of interest. Where have you been? Should I be the one asking this? Shen Yu thought of something. A few days ago, Zesuke said you didn't go back to the cat house. I remember that you were fighting with Sarutobi Sasuke. Pochi yawned lazily. Very interesting, Ape Demon King. I was amazed. While the time for the summoning technique was not over yet, I pestered it for a while. Come to think of it, you are also quite strange. Shen Yu held his chin and said thoughtfully, you can change your body shape at will, gather into shape, disperse into gas, and evolve a barrier with yourself, draw a line on the ground as a prison. Are you finally interested? Pochi's head floated over, and his bronze eyes lit up. This is all a clever use of natural energy. 10 billion taels, I will pass on the fairy art I practiced to you, how about it? If you don't want to teach, just say it. Do you know what the concept of 1 billion is? Shen Yu slapped over, and Pochi's cat head immediately dispersed into mist and reunited on the other side. Besides, if you learn the magic of Myoboku Mountain, you will turn into a toad. If you learn the magic of Ryachi Cave, you will turn into a snake, and if you learn yours, you won't grow cat hair. Shen Yu waved his hand. I always feel that the human body is the innate immortal body. There is always a magic that is more suitable for humans, and you are all considered monsters. Meow, where did these words come from? They are quite fresh. What is this? The bright blue mist passed by Shen Yu's pocket, wrapped in a golden object, and floated in front of Pochi. The blue mist condensed into a cat's paw, holding the helmsman's order on the meat pad. Pochi opened his mouth and bit it, and his eyes immediately became surprised. It's gold, pure gold. Give it back to me. Shen Yu stretched out his hand. This thing is of no use to you. No, this is the cost of this time. Shen Yu had expected its temper, and took out a bag from his other waist bag and threw it over. It was a thick stack of banknotes. Here is 1 million taels. Pochi took the purse with a smile, and no longer missed the helmsman's order, allowing Shen Yu to take it back. It licked its cat paw. By the way, after seeing that Ape Demon King, I suddenly had an idea, can I also become a weapon and always be by his side? Shenyu was slightly startled. For example, Pochi turned his body into a blue light mist, spinning around Shenyu, with a dreamy color, as if he was in the sea of stars. As the light gathered, it eventually turned into a long blue sword, hanging next to Frost's heart. Shenyu was amazed, holding the handle, and flicked his fingers on the blade lightly. This was a normal operation, and the sharpness could be judged by the metal echo. It was clear and loud, like a dragon's roar. It can be big or small. A lazy voice came from the handle. Got it. Shenyu suddenly looked bored and threw the long sword, which was full of brilliance and gorgeous, aside. It must be too expensive. I can't afford it. The daily rent is 3 million taels. Consider it. I can even make a cage to lock the enemy and inflict damage. Shenyu ignored it and pushed the door open. The dazzling sunlight came into his eyes, and the air with a faint fragrance of flowers and plants was refreshing. His eyes instantly adapted to the light. The distant mountains were towering, and the endless green came to his face. Maybe he was used to seeing ice and snow in the past few days. At this moment, bathing in the warm sunshine, he actually had an illusion that he was in another world. The cat house is still the same cat house. It sounds like a house, but it is actually built on a ruin. It is a city exclusively for cats. Among these cats, there are ordinary cats and talking ninja cats. They are good at making ninja tools. With their shrewd minds, they have already established their own economic chain. The specific situation can be described in 4 words. Among the abundance. Here, you can see several cats of all sizes were jumping up and down in the streets and alleys. Only the Uchiha clan had a way to enter the cat house. Well, it's time to go back to find Master Madara. Guang has taken me back to the base a few times, I remember, well. Shenyu lowered his head in thought, his brows knitted tighter and tighter. Am I so directionally challenged? He finally realized something was wrong. Although he couldn't tell east, west, south, north, but his memory of the roads he had walked was not vague. The dynamic vision from the Uchiha clan and the memory brought by the super high soul strength would allow him to remember every road he had walked. It's okay in the Iron Country. After all, it's the first time, and it's normal not to recognize the road. But now, he has walked the road from the cat house to the Canopy Bridge many times, there's no reason why he can't remember it. Humans have a natural sense of direction. Unlike animals, humans don't have organs that specifically sense the geomagnetic field. In other words, human magnetic sense is too weak, because the 5 senses and vision that humans have are enough to ensure survival, and magnetic sense is too redundant. Over a long period of time, human redundant magnetic sense will degenerate or even disappear. It is for this reason that people will rely more on visual memory to locate their position in space. If you want to go to a place, your brain will often imagine the general appearance of the destination at the first time, and then the surrounding environment, and then follow the previous memory and your current location to follow the map and conceive the general route step by step. But now Shenyu, this memory about the route has split. His intuition told him that the south was the straight line of the destination, but suddenly he felt that the east, west, and north were the correct directions. Each split memory fits the position in his mind. This feeling of being close and distant seems to make it seem that no matter where he goes, it is wrong. Makoro. When he was undecided, he decisively opened the Mangekyō Sharingan, and, Makoro, slowly moved in a burst of red light. With the blessing of infinite adaptability, he looked inside his body inch by inch, and kept recalling the route in his memory. Something is wrong. There is something wrong with my body. Under the interference of some force, the root memory that once existed in my mind has become confused. Is this magnetic induction? Could it be that my brain has evolved the ability to sense magnetic fields under a certain adaptation? He looked up suddenly and grasped the key point of the problem at once. It is Flying Thunder God Technique. He silently clenched his fist. The essence of Flying Thunder God Technique, after all, is to use chakra marks to jump in space, which is an undisputed space-time ninjutsu. In space, there is a uniformly distributed physical field, which is composed of countless tiny particles in motion and transmits magnetic forces between real objects. This is the magnetic field. It refers to the existence in the universe and is an important environmental factor in space. It can be the magnetic field generated by the current in the universe and the stars in space, or the magnetic field generated by the current system in space. The disturbance and change of the magnetic field in space affects the distribution and change of charged particles in space. In other words, if the space fluctuates, the magnetic field will change. Shen Yu frowned. The reason why he was so embarrassed in the previous battle with Tobirama was that he put the magic hollow, running at full power on adapting to the Flying Thunder God technique, but the power of space was so vast that he could not complete the adaptation until he was transferred to the deep sea by Tobirama. After that, he even wanted to use Magic Hollow to adapt to his Heaven's Constant Standing, but unfortunately, activating the power of the origin at the same time was tantamount to self-contradiction. Moreover, the essence of Heaven's Constant Standing is to change the space state from the time state, and it will not cause space fluctuations. Therefore, the adaptation to space has been stagnant. This also made him understand that it is difficult for the current Magic Hollow to adapt to the essence of all things in the world through ninjutsu. Even if it can be done, it will take an incalculable amount of time. But for the Flying Thunder God technique, the solution given by Moxu Luo is to evolve the ability to sense magnetic fields and detect subtle changes in space and time, so that he can react at the moment of spatial fluctuations and directly predict the target's spatial landing point. But, because of incomplete evolution, he did not successfully adapt to Flying Thunder God. Therefore, the incompletely evolved magnetic sense cannot be synchronized with the original visual memory, so they will interfere with each other. If I can't fully adapt to Flying Thunder God, the original sense of direction and the new magnetic sense will always interfere with each other, causing me to become a road idiot. No wonder why I was standing still in the Iron Country turn. If the adaptation of Makoro is not complete, it may cause me to have some strange problems. I have to pay attention to it in the future. He took a long breath and looked at the horizon. Senju Tobirama, I will find you. The door behind him opened, and Pochi, who had turned into an ordinary cat-sized one, floated onto his shoulder. 30,000 taels, be my navigation, Shen Yu said leisurely. After figuring out the reason, he quickly accepted the fact that being a road idiot now does not mean that he will always be a road idiot. If he really completes the evolution of magnetic field induction, all space-based ninjutsu will be invisible in front of him. Under the premise that his mental power is strong enough, the entire ninja world, no, even outside the planet, but within the field, will become a living map in his mind. To a certain extent, there is also a kind of magnetic field between people. He can even use magnetic induction to influence the human body, assimilate and change his emotions, and then use illusions to control their spirits. But this is a double-edged sword. If the mental power is not strong enough, if you rashly sense it, you may be empathized by others and become confused. Lead the way. Pochi narrowed his eyes. 30,000 taels is not enough, at least 50,000. Haha, whatever you want. The man and the cat quickly walked out of the cat house and walked to the city gate. Isn't Shenyu worried about being exposed? It's not like you to walk down the street so brazenly. Pochi licked his paw. Shenyu spread his hands indifferently. Calculate the time. Senju Hashirama is busy with the 5-cage talks right now. It's impossible for him to come all the way to see me. As for Senju Tobirama, I wish he would come to see me. He had learned about the information about the Fire Country through Zesuke a long time ago. He spent several thousand taels. Although it was expensive, it was true and reliable. A cow-colored ninja cat passed by Shenyu's feet and stretched lazily as if no one was around. Then, the ninja cat stood up, formed a seal with its 2 front paws, and slapped the ground. Summoning Jutsu Meow. Bang! A large amount of white smoke dissipated in front of him. Shenyu turned his head slightly and stared at a group of fresh Uchiha. Hey, long time no see. He found a familiar figure. His eyes were light and his mouth was smiling. Good brother. Uchiha Jing was stunned. The boy standing across the street looked familiar. Handsome features, gentle as jade, and black-dyed hair naturally scattered. Although the clothes have changed, the extraordinary temperament is exactly the figure he has been thinking about day and night. This is Uchiha Shenyu. Beside Jing, Uchiha Satsuna immediately bent his body and drew his sword, as if facing a great enemy. In an instant, the two of them opened their Sharingan in response. The Chunin who were traveling with them drew their swords and cast hostile eyes, and the scene suddenly became tense. What's funny is that these people all wore furry cat ear props on their heads, and together with the children behind them, they also tried to make ferocious expressions. This thing is called a cat tool. Wearing it, you can understand cat language. For Shenyu, it is completely unnecessary because he has already adapted to the language of cats through pupil techniques. This skill made Uchiha Guang envious. Meow. The cow cat jumped up, and its fur instantly stood up. It hid aside and bared its teeth. Uchiha Setsuna was unmoved. He was also a ninja who survived the Warring States period. In the final decisive battle, he was surrounded by the Thousand Hands and surrendered. He survived by chance. But Uchiha Shenyu was different. He fought with the Thousand Hands until the last moment, and he had to stop until Madara-sama was defeated by Hashirama. 5 years ago, Madara left Konoha and called on the whole clan before leaving, but Setsuna did not leave with him. On the one hand, he was really tired of war. Peace was hard won, and he didn't want to go back to that life of suffering. Secondly, Madara didn't explain clearly what the real road to peace he mentioned was, which made most of the tribe members confused and completely unable to understand the behavior of the tribe leader. Finally, when Setsuna looked around, he saw that all the tribe members were looking at each other, sitting there without moving, and he didn't have the courage to stand up. But the man in front of him not only followed Madara-sama out, but also showed his Mangekyō Sharingan in a high-profile manner, and made a strong move, blowing up the gate of Konoha village, and even Senju Tobirama couldn't stop him. Especially a few days ago, at the end of that shocking battle, Tobirama exhausted all means and tried his best to kill him. Although the result was not announced to the public, Setsuna speculated that this famous, speed ghost, was probably dead. But now, he is still dressed brightly and standing in front of everyone with a bright look. Therefore, he has to be nervous now. Jing, I'll go first, you cover the tribe members to evacuate. Shan Na stared at the figure opposite him. Tisk, although I look down on you, but now there is no one else I can rely on except you. In fact, Shan Na's mood is complicated, because he has always looked down on the door although he could not find any fault. He felt uncomfortable every time he faced those eyes full of scrutiny and vigilance. If it were not for the sake of Senju Hashirama, he would have been unable to bear it. Now looking at the high-spirited Shenyu, he actually had an unspeakable envy. Why was it not me who followed Madara-sama at the beginning? No, you can't stop him, Uchiha Jing said in a tragic voice. At this moment, it is me who should stay behind. What a joke. Do you think I don't know that he is your real brother? Setsuna whispered. The drama of brothers killing each other is really ugly. This is not my choice, Jing said in a low voice, because he knew that Shenyu's eyes were always on him. Really? Setsuna said angrily. You left when I told you to, so this is why I hate you. Their little actions were seen by Shenyu, but he just sneered and slowly withdrew his gaze. Let's go. Go south for 3,000 meters, meow. The man and the cat ignored everyone and walked away. Jing and Setsuna were stunned at the same time. He didn't do anything. Setsuna let out a long breath, and his tense nerves gradually relaxed. This feeling of hovering between life and death was really long overdue. A gust of wind blew over, and his back felt cold. He realized that before they even fought, the other party just gave him a look and he was already sweating profusely. Uchiha Jing stared at the back unwillingly, with mixed feelings. For some reason, although the conflict was avoided, the more careless Shenyu's attitude towards him was, the angrier he became. Swish, swish, swish. Suddenly, 3 shurikens flew out of the team and headed straight for the back of Shenyu's head. Pochi didn't even look at it, but moved his tail, and the blue mist rolled up, easily blocking the shurikens. In the eyes of Jing and Setsuna, Shenyu paused, turned back slowly, and frowned slightly. Who threw it? Setsuna turned back suddenly. It was a Chunin in the clan, about 16 or 17 years old. He had just opened the Sharingan a while ago and was eager to prove his age. At this moment, he was excited, and there was a little hope in his excitement. He looked at Setsuna, trying to get praise from his predecessor. I overcame fear. Dare to face a strong enemy. Single quote. Run. Uchiha Setsuna roared, but it was too late. Shen Yu just took a step forward, and his body was in a daze, and he came to the crowd in an instant. Boom! The strong sonic boom was like a bomb, and the impact was accompanied by a strong wind, blowing everyone away. The two Jonins in the team were the first to stabilize their balance. Jing turned around in midair and pulled the three boys to his chest to prevent them from hitting the building behind them, while Setsuna stabbed the ground with his sword, leaving a long groove. When they looked up, the terrifying scene was reflected in their wide-open Sharingan eyes. Shinyu was wearing a skeleton, and a huge bone arm stretched out from the curling black air, grabbing the Chunin who had just attacked. Lord Madara will not get angry with the weak, but I am not as noble as him. Shenyu slowly drew his sword, and a cold breath spread. You shot me 3 shurikens, and I will return you 1 sword, which is reasonable. Silently, Frost's heart was suddenly unsheathed, and a green light flashed by. With a puff, in the horrified eyes of all Uchiha, the Chunin was split into 2 pieces, blood splashed from the fingers of the bone hand, and organs flowed. Uchiha Shenyu. Jing's eyes were bloodshot. Is this how you treat your own people? I really didn't expect you to be so narrow-minded. Behind him, several young Uchiha hugged each other in panic, like a nest of quails in the wind and rain. Those Chunins were as fragile as fledglings, lying on the ground looking at Shenyu in horror, without even the courage to stand up. Jing didn't care about his companions behind him. A ray of red fire lit up the blade, and his figure shot out like a sharp arrow. Uchiha-style sword leaping flame. As long as I end you, as long as I swing this sword, everything will be over. Shenyu stared at him indifferently. Strictly speaking, he was looking into his eyes, without moving, until Jing rushed in front of him. Then he grasped the hilt of the sword and quickly swung 3 swords. Ding ding ding. Jing's palm felt a sharp pain, and the tiger's mouth cracked. After only 3 swords, the saber collapsed in front of him. In the slow motion effect of the Sharingan, 3 cracks penetrated the blade, and tiny fragments burst out one by one along the spread of the cracks, brushing against Jing's ears, and seemed to be accompanied by a long cracking sound. Shenyu's movements were as fast as a phantom. Jing's Sharingan had been activated to the extreme, but still could not capture his movements. Squeak. The tip of the knife pierced Jing's eyebrows, a little red ripples, and the pain made Jing regain his sanity. Obviously, he was completely seen through. The knife was hanging there, and it felt cold. As long as Shenyu pushed forward, he would die here. Thinking of this, Jing immediately retreated. Ha! A group of black shadows blocked his retreat route, and a huge fist fell from the sky, the ground exploded, and Jing was deeply hammered into the soil. The bone hand moved away, and Shenyu looked down at his brother from a high position. The kaleidoscope pattern shimmered, and his eyes were as bright as glass. Narrow-minded, Shenyu said contemptuously, you betrayed your brothers, kowtowed to your enemies, and begged for mercy. You are qualified to say that to me. Jing was covered in dust and coughed up a mouthful of blood. His ribs were smashed, but he still gritted his teeth and said, it is you who betrayed the Uchiha clan. Don't be ridiculous. I am the Uchiha. Shenyu raised his frost heart. Half of his face was as beautiful as usual, and through the mirror-like blade, the other half of his face completely turned into Susanoo mask, ferocious and mighty, with murderous aura. None of you are. In this scene, Jing's eyes were filled with fear. Shenyu did not cast an illusion on him, but he actually felt like he was facing a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. In the distance, Uchiha Shan was staring at the back of the black air, and a touch of madness flashed in his eyes. Boom, boom. This is his heartbeat, an exciting heartbeat. Beads of sweat oozed from the tip of Setsuna's nose, his nostrils expanded excitedly, and his pale cheeks flushed slightly. He had never heard such an exciting speech before. It was simply the declaration of a tyrant. Uchiha Shenyu. His performance was simply perfect, calm and unrestrained, domineering and free. In his mind, the Uchiha clan should be like this, just like Lord Madara. Shenyu glanced at the Uchiha people who had been paralyzed by fear, sheathed his sword, and his skeleton turned into black gas and dissipated. Do you know why you are so weak? Jing's eyes regained some spirit and looked up blankly. Shenyu said calmly, because you don't hate me enough. Foolish brother, hate me. Your real power is in these eyes. Only hatred is the key to unlock this treasure house. I hated the Senju clan at the beginning, and you just hate me without any burden. He took a few steps forward and said with his head tilted, Tell Senju Tobarama to clean his neck and wait, maybe one day I will get excited and take his life. After saying that, he slowly bent his knees and jumped up. Bang! Shen Yu disappeared instantly, and a surging air wave was surging on the spot. A stream of shadows shot straight into the blue sky, and layers of milky white sonic booms spread like ripples. Shan Na was still staying in the same place until Jing's call came to his ears. Setsu, Setsu. He came back to his senses. Ah! Jing climbed out of the pit with great pain, glanced at him, and showed a relieved look. It's normal for the first time. At the beginning, I was also frightened by his eyes and stood there, not knowing what I was doing, so, it's not shameful. Ah, it seems that our mission has completely failed. Jing smiled bitterly. A deep sense of powerlessness surged in his eyes until it overwhelmed him. Hate. With the help of Pochi, Shenyu successfully found the direction of Shinwubi Bridge. At this moment, a man and a cat were flying in the air, falling at high speed towards the landing point of the base. His current way of traveling is terrible. Compared to the invincible Hulk, he can easily leap to the sky with a single leap. The distance of the journey is just the difference of a few jumps. With such a strong kinetic energy, aren't you afraid of destroying your base? Pochi asked. After all, Shenyu's landing place was always a mess. I have my own way. Shenyu exhaled slowly, and in an instant, a huge amount of chakra gushed out from his back, like a huge gentian blooming. The chakra changed with the wind, and finally condensed into a pair of huge ice blue wings, which were magnificent. His acupoints had been opened up long ago, and he felt refreshed and indescribable. Every pore could release chakra, and with his fine control ability, it was easy to do this. With the cushioning of the giant wings, Shenyu also landed lightly while gliding. You can go now. Shenyu threw a purse to Pochi, who took it with a smile and then disappeared. Shenyu exhaled and walked into the base. The stone door gradually opened, and a delicate little pink fist greeted him. Shenyu raised his hand to block the fist, and while turning sideways, he grabbed the opponent's wrist and pulled it slightly. Uchiha Guang passed by him with a fragrant breeze. Guang, your way of welcoming is really unique. He walked into the base. However, the wind started again. Guang did not stop, and kicked Shenyu's temple with a high whip kick. Shenyu smiled, still only used one hand, gently patted her slender ankle, and swung her legs apart. Who told you to be so excessive, to come back so long, to make Lord Madara worried? Guang was not discouraged at all, and kept attacking Shenyu, taking care of the center of the eyebrows, chest, side waist, and various angles. The two jade hands were as fast as the wind, leaving a series of afterimages in the air. But Shenyu was faster than her. He put one hand behind his back and used the other hand to defend himself. It seemed that he had turned into an airtight wall, blocking all the fist shadows a few inches in front of him. The muffled sound became one. Suddenly, Guang's expression became stern, and he quickly withdrew his attack and wanted to retreat to avoid it, but it was too late. A white palm pierced through all the afterimages and grabbed her collar without any fancy moves. With a huge force, she was thrown out directly. That's enough, Guang. Guang spun a few times to unload the power, and stepped lightly on the wall. Her black hair was flowing like water, and she looked down at Shenyu. Why, are you scared? She snorted. Shenyu spread his hands. Use the physical skills I taught you to deal with me, you can't find an excuse to lose. Humph, one day, I will defeat you. Guang landed lightly, raised her little face, and deliberately didn't look at him. Yes, 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 Shenyu raised his hand to surrender, and then walked into the stone room. How is Lord Ban? Guang hugged his shoulders, and a strange look flashed across his pretty face. You two really trust each other. He believes that you are fine, and you believe that he is not dead. Really? Shenyu thought for a while and said, maybe, this is the tacit understanding between men. I don't trust you. Inside the base, Shenyu pushed the door open and entered, and a man sitting on a stone chair came into view. Uchiha Madara was still shirtless, with bloodstains crawling all over his body along the gaps in his muscles. From a distance, his body was covered with scars, most of which had healed and scarred, leaving only a piece of flesh on his chest that was still bloody red. It beat like a heart, and every time it twitched, a little blood would seep out. In contrast, Madara looked calm and at ease. Seeing Shenyu return, he looked up. It's a little later than I expected. Madara spoke in a low voice, seeming to have experienced a lot. Something unexpected happened. Shen Yu walked towards Madara, thinking that Guang really didn't lie to me, and Lord Madara was really worried about me. He took the initiative to explain. Thanks to Senju Tobarama, I went to the Iron Country. Although it was embarrassing, it was not without gain. Oh, looking at the blood-stained Madara, Guangxu frowned slightly, picked up the towel and threw it into the water skillfully. Madara glanced silently, and his face twitched slightly. What is this for? Shen Yu scratched his head. Guang explained. Mada has transplanted the flesh and blood of Senju Hashirama, but it has not healed for a long time, and the blood cannot scab, causing the wound to be exposed. In order to avoid infection, the excess blood must be cleaned. As she spoke, she had already come in front of Madara. Shen Yu was speechless. You should take a look at Madara's expression first, he is obviously resisting. It doesn't matter, she is right, Madara said with a tense face. Shen Yu pondered for a moment and said, wait, if you want to clean the blood stains, I have a better way. As he spoke, he came to Ban, stretched out his palm, and aimed at Ban's chest from a distance. Master Ban, it's time. Yes, anytime. Ban looked indifferent. Suddenly, his skin quickly felt cool, as if he was soaking in spring water. He was a little surprised that there was no pain from wiping his body in the past. In a blink of an eye, his upper body was soaked, the blood stains fell off, and his skin became clean and tidy again. Thousands of small streams of water wrapped the bright red blood and converged on Shen Yu's palm. This doesn't seem to be water escape. Ban narrowed his eyes, water vapor in nature. As expected of Master Ban. Shen Yu nodded, and in front of Ban, he couldn't help showing a bit of pride. This is one of the gains I mentioned. He threw the water ball into the sink with a flick of his hand. I have adapted to the sea. Ban suddenly raised his eyes, his pupils trembling slightly. It must be painful. Yeah, I almost died. Shen Yu looked at Ban's chest, but compared to Master Ban, it's still a lot worse. Ban leaned back on the chair with his head raised, his eyes wandering. I have been in the ninja world for many years, and I have never been so weak. The chakra in my body is extremely disordered, like thousands of balls of wool entangled with each other, cut and untangled, let alone fighting. Even my mental strength is not as good as before. You still have us, Guang said firmly. Pain is only temporary, and you will be reborn after you get through it. Shen Yu said softly, this is what Master Ban told me. Ban's eyes regained their spirits and looked into Shen Yu's eyes. I am very much looking forward to Master Ban's power of all things. Shen Yu smiled. A smile also crossed the corners of Ban's mouth. He slowly exhaled and said in a gentle voice, tell me about your experience these days. So, when I'm not here for a few days, you will give this to Master Ban. In the warehouse, Shen Yu stared at the piles of carrots and fell into deep thought. This thing is good. I heard that these help wounds heal. Guang's pretty face blushed, and her two little hands clasped together, her voice became less and less confident. Carrot soup, carrot rice, steamed carrot, dry fried carrot, carved hollow carrot. That can't be eaten all the time. Shen Yu's forehead drooped with a few black lines. Poor Master Ban, what has he experienced these days? These are good, but they can't maintain basic nutrition. Although I don't want to admit it, Master Ban is weak now. Shen Yu turned around. I'm going out for a while, and I still have to have the necessary ingredients. A few minutes later, he came back with a round wild boar in his hand, which had just been slaughtered. Swish! A foot-long blade of light appeared from Shen Yu's fingertips, shining like translucent jade. He quickly gutted the wild boar, took out the internal organs, and cut it into large and small pieces of meat. The whole process was smooth and there was no blood on his body. All the splattered blood was wrapped by the water and sent to the sewer. Soon, as the onions, ginger and garlic were fried in the pan, a faint smell of meat wafted out of the kitchen, and the sizzling sound of the meat in the pan made people salivate. Even Guang beside him couldn't help swallowing his saliva. Shen Yu glanced at her and suddenly found that the little girl was staring at him intently, staring at his every move, cooking steps, heat, oil temperature, types of seasonings, and the amount of sprinkles, etc., unwilling to miss any details. You want to learn, I can teach you, right? Shen Yu began to stir the wok. I didn't learn it. I don't need you to teach me anything except fighting. Guang snorted. Big sister, look in the mirror before you say this, your Sharingan is open. Shenyu shook his head and laughed, raised his hand and cooked the fried sugar color. In the stone room, Uchiha Madara, who was pale, suddenly twitched his nose. He raised his head and his stomach rumbled. Soon, Shenyu walked into the stone room with a plate of delicious pork belly. Mada, this is the pork belly I made for you. I cut the side dishes. Guang quickly added. It's fat but not greasy. Would you mind giving me a taste? Shenyu said with a smile, it's good for your injury. I've tasted it first. It's not poisonous. You can eat it without worry. Guang wiped his moist thin lips. Ban, who was resting with his eyes closed, slowly opened his eyes. The pork belly in front of him was fragrant and bright in color, but he just glanced at it. No need. As expected of you, Lord Madara. It seems that ordinary food is not to your liking. Shenyu raised the corner of his mouth, but this is not ordinary pork, but a wild boar from the deep forest. It also has chakra in its body, which is considered a ninja beast. As he said, he looked at Uchiha Guang and winked, speaking of which, this is also the first time I use ninja beasts to cook. I can't guarantee the taste. It seems that, Lord Madara doesn't dare to challenge its taste. Guang looked at him strangely, nodded belatedly, and agreed, yes, Lord Madara can't do it. Humph, it's just a ninja beast. Madara snorted coldly, give it all, I'll eat it all for you. The two looked at each other and smiled knowingly. Madara picked up a trembling piece of meat and slowly put it into his mouth. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. He suddenly opened his eyes wide. It is tender and elastic, with a dense texture. With a layer of red soup, the aroma of meat and fat alternate in the mouth, which is very enjoyable. Oh, you are very motivated. I can't lose to Master Madara. Shenyu picked up the chopsticks and joined the battle. You are cheating, wait for me. Guang puffed up his mouth and came over. After eating and drinking, the three of them gathered together and began to discuss future plans. Hide your weapon and wait for the right time to act. A latent dragon in the abyss will rise to the sky. Madara said softly, giving a guideline. Uchiha Hikaru tilted his head slightly, According to the Moon Eye plan, shouldn't we capture the tailed beasts at this time? Now, the two of us, attack Konoha. Shenyu glanced at her silently, let me calculate for you. There are 7 tailed beasts in Konoha now. It is indeed a good time to solve the problem once and for all, but there are also Hashirama Senju, the shadows of the 5 major countries, and elite ninjas from the major hidden villages. Will you win? You will die. He looked confident. Don't rush to capture the tailed beasts. It's useless to capture them without the outer path demon statue. Madara said, wait until I awaken the power of God, and then it's time to act. I think so too. Shenyu raised his hand. So, before Madara-sama awakens his power, we can only stay here. Guang hugged his legs and rested his chin on his knees. During this period, hide your identity and keep a low profile. Shenyu noticed her gaze and spread his hands. Tisk, I have no problem. Although I can't seek revenge on Senju Tobirama, it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Madara smiled lightly and glanced at the two of them. You two are both in your prime, and it's really not right to be trapped in this small and cramped base. You can change the time when you can go out. Guang had a round fan and a sickle in his hand. Shenyu had a scroll in his hand. Guang, when you can control these 2 weapons with ease, it's time for you to step out of the base. Shenyu, when you comprehend and learn this secret technique, it will be the beginning of your fame. Uchiha Madara looked at the two of them separately, a gratified smile flashed across his one eye, and then he took a long breath, as if he relaxed. Guang held the flame fan and sickle in his hands, and couldn't let go. During the period when Madara-sama recovers his strength, I will keep them. Madara said lightly, I'll give them to you. Really? I don't need them anymore. What is this? Shenyu opened the scroll, and a line of familiar names came into view. Izanagi. Ban returned to his seat. This is my improved version. The one left in the clan is too primitive. When activated, an evil yin-tun chakra will be generated in the brain, which will affect the user's emotions, making them anxious, suspicious, and arrogant. My version does not have this side effect. Shenyu held the scroll as if he had found a treasure. As long as you are not stupid enough to use your right eye to activate this technique, Ban added silently. Shenyu's face turned black on the spot. Ah, let's calculate the time, Madara suddenly said. Hashirama, he won't live for many years. The two looked over at the same time. Why? Creation and regeneration technique, Madara said slowly. His technique that can heal wounds without hand seals, which is incomparable to all other ninjutsu, is not without cost. There is a limit to the number of cell divisions, so human life also has an end. Even the legendary six-path sage cannot avoid this. It seems that he is not old and invulnerable, but in fact he is overdrawing his lifespan, including his would escape secret technique, which to some extent also comes from his vitality. Madara looked up at the stone ceiling. With Hashirama's strength, he can be said to be invincible in the world, because no one can kill him. The only one who can kill him is himself. Our battle has consumed too much of his strength. After waking up, he captured 7-tailed beasts in one breath. He just wants to use his last remaining energy while he still has time. Quote. Banara showed a meaningful smile. He wants to use the destructive power of the tailed beasts to replace himself, so that all countries can check and balance each other, deter each other, and dare not act rashly. I understand him too well. But he doesn't know that the tailed beasts are not him. The minds of the tailed beasts are destined to make them only weapons forever. Once the weapons fall into the hands of ambitious people, the consequences are disastrous. The novel was taken from the Raleigh's website. Close where you're reading it and support us on our website for more free novels. Wait, either 10 years or 8 years, Banara raised his head and opened his lips slightly. A war of a larger scale is coming. I do have an immature suggestion. Shinyu pondered. I wonder if Lord Banara has the intention to establish an organization. Establish an organization. Banara frowned slightly. The Moon Eye plan is destined to be a lonely road. It will not be accepted and recognized by the world. It is difficult to find like-minded people, right? No need for like-minded people. As long as we give them the benefits they want, they will be willing to help us do things. Quote. Your idea is too simple. Human nature is complicated. Except for you two, I don't trust anyone. Shen Yu explained. I think that although our personal strength is strong, it does not mean that we have to do everything ourselves. With an organization, we can leave some complicated and trivial things to them, and we only need to plan and act at the critical moment. Shen Yu pondered for a moment and nodded. There are always some truths that are inconvenient to show up. Let's do this. I will leave this matter to you. Yes, Shen Yu nodded. Shen Yu reminded. Remember that the Moon Eye plan is the only way to peace. The world is destined to be unable to understand it. Don't leak it unless it is absolutely necessary. Also, only the three of us are the practitioners of the truth. Others are just tools. Don't worry, I will help Master Madara supervise him. Guang looked at Shen Yu with some amusement, and a charming smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Shen Yu said angrily, of course, these have to wait until the two of us can walk out of the base. Since then, the three of them have spent a quiet and comfortable time. That's right, use wind escape to control the direction, fire escape to assist with fuel, and yin escape to control the balance, and gradually control the flame within a millimeter. Uchiha Guang put her hands together and kept changing her hand seals. A circle of dark and hot flames circled around her like an elf, gradually growing larger and forming a black flame tornado more than 3 meters high. When you can skillfully control my flame escape, that's when you can control your own Amaterasu at will, Shen Yu instructed from the side. Don't talk like Madara-sama, thank you. The voice of light floated out of the tornado, and the arrogant tone suddenly weakened. Well, don't remove it, I'll operate it for a while. Yes, this is the daily practice of the two. Sometimes they practice on their own, sometimes they learn from each other, and during mealtime, they will compete to ask Madara for advice on their practice. Madara also answered them one by one with a smile. The Uchiha clan leader showed the profound knowledge of a ceiling combat power in the ninja world, knowing everything and answering everything. Every time he pointed out, the two of them suddenly understood. Not only that, he also taught them according to their different fighting styles. For Guang, he focused on basic practice, physical skills, ninjutsu and some unconventional but practical secrets. The one that Shen Yu learned 5 years ago, a set of equipment, completely became Guang's teaching material. For Shen Yu, Ban taught him more about pupil power, which gave him a new understanding of the operation of the Mangekyō Sharingan. If you step into the base, you can often see a boy studying hard with a scroll in his hand, and you can often see a girl sweating alone in the training room. Of course, if you occasionally enter the kitchen, if you are lucky, you may meet an adult male wearing an apron, studying braised pork and its ingredients. In this small and dark base, the three of them lived together, eating, clothing, living, and joking, which was rare and comfortable. There is no 60 years in the mountains, and no years in cultivation. In the blink of an eye, 6 years passed quickly. Shinwubi Bridge. Yes, I got it. Here are your 300 taels. Meow, tell me if you have anything to say, meow. In the stone room of the base, a boy about 17 or 18 years old waved his hand, and the orange cat in front of him immediately turned into white smoke and dissipated. He had an upright posture, slender limbs, delicate skin like fine porcelain, long black jade-like hair shining with a faint luster, a well-defined face, clear phoenix eyes, and unparalleled handsomeness. Shenyu, is there any news outside? A girl walked out of the training room. She was as tall as jade, with exquisite curves, and a waterfall of black hair tied into a high ponytail. She had a cold face, and her every move had an elegant temperament. Her pupils were like water and her eyes were like dots of lacquer. She was steaming with a faint heat and sweating profusely. It was obvious that she had just finished a high-intensity training and was walking over with a towel on her head. Ah, it's not very important information, it's just news. The boy turned his head, his eyes were light. Time flies, Senju Hashirama has a granddaughter. Granddaughter, Senju Hashirama is not only alive, but also has a granddaughter. Hush, Shenyu immediately raised his index finger, with a serious face, this matter is not that important, it's enough for the two of us to know. Uchiha Guang tilted his head, so, Madara-sama is also old enough to be a grandfather. Shenyu appeared in front of Guang in an instant and raised his hand to cover her mouth. Don't let him know, otherwise. Is it possible that I already know it? A low voice floated from the kitchen. Then, a middle-aged man with red and white eyes came out. He wore a dark blue shirt on his upper body and an apron on his lower body. His figure was still tall. Time left a faint mark on his face, but his sharp eyes became deeper. Ah, Shenyu let go of his hand with a wry smile. Guang also realized that something was wrong, pretending to be calm and looking aside. HMPH, come in and eat. The three of them entered the stone room one after another and ate together as usual. Speaking of which, over the years, Madara's cooking skills have really improved rapidly, and even Shenyu praised him. For 6 years, the three of them did not stay in the base and closed their eyes and ears. The ninja cat Tachibana Maru would regularly bring intelligence, including the world pattern, map changes, etc., and the most important thing was the intelligence of Konoha. Including the movements of Hashirama and Tobarama, some iconic major events that happened in Konoha village, everything was told in detail. Of course, the price was not cheap, and it was all paid by Shenyu. After the 5-cage talks ended, the ninja world did enter an unprecedented period of development. The economies of the 5 major countries developed rapidly, and ninjas officially became household names. Ninja villages were everywhere. Regardless of the size of the country, the number of ninjas and comprehensive strength were used as the standard for judging the strength of the country. Because of the ninja cats gathering intelligence, the few people knew the distribution of the tailed beasts very well. The 1 tail remained intact in the sand village. The 3-tail and 6-tail aquatic tailed beasts belonged to the mist village. The cloud village got the 2-tail and 8-tail. The rock village was allocated the 4-tail and 5-tail. Unlike the original time and space, the Taki country, which was not among the 5 major countries, did not get any tailed beasts. The 7-tail was left in Konoha village. In the following year, Konoha had searched for the traces of the 9-tail many times, and the Senju brothers even went out in person, but in the end they returned empty-handed, and the matter of capturing the 9-tail gradually came to an end. Konoha would not know that the 9-tail they had been thinking about had been sealed in someone's body, completely coexisting with the Jinchuriki. And this person was something they could never dream of. The wheel of history moved slowly forward, without stopping for a moment. In the 8th year of Konoha, Hashirama's wife Uzumaki Mito became the first 7-tailed Jinchuriki. 1 year later, Senju of the Forest and Uzumaki of the Uzumaki officially established diplomatic relations, and Uzumaki village became an ally of Konoha village. From then on, the uniforms of Konoha ninjas had the logo of the Uzumaki clan, which was a symbol of the friendly relations between the two countries for generations. In the 10th year of Konoha, Konoha Hokage Senju Hashirama was assassinated by an unknown ninja. Unfortunately, the assassination failed, and the assassin escaped at the cost of half his life. In the same year, the top leaders of Takigakure village in Taki country all died tragically overnight. Their hearts were taken out alive, and their deaths were extremely tragic. In the 11th year of Konoha, in order to ensure the stability of education and the efficiency of talent training, Senju Tobarama founded a school, Konoha Academy. Regardless of family and identity, ninja knowledge will be taught. There were 36 graduates in the first class, including Sarutobi Hiruzen, Shimura Danzo, Mito Kato En, Udatane Kaharu, and Uchiha Kagami. As for Akamichi Tofu, it's already cold. In the 12th year of Konoha, Tobarama created the Konoha Anbu, the full name of which is Konoha Village Assassination Tactics Special Forces, which directly obeys the orders of the Hokage. This is the first spy organization among the 5 major countries. His politics, the wrist treatment, was imitated by ninja villages in various countries. The members of the Anbu are all excellent ninjas selected from the village. Each family has one. They are mainly responsible for protecting the Hokage and preventing foreign enemies from invading the Konoha ninja village. Sometimes they are also responsible for tasks such as scouting the enemy and assassination. Until the 13th year of Konoha, Tsunade was born. You too, it's been 6 years, and you haven't completed your training yet. Madara suddenly spoke with a cold tone. Guang silently glanced at Shenyu opposite, without saying anything, but kicked Shenyu's knee under the table. Hey, my disciple's talent is dull, this secret technique is too difficult to practice. Shenyu hesitated and glared at Guang. That look seemed to say, see, it's all your fault. You made him unhappy. Ah, me too, the sickle is okay, but how to use this flame fan, it's too difficult. Guang also looked aggrieved. Madara snorted coldly, and his eyes swept over the two of them one by one. The latter looked at each other tacitly and buried their heads in eating. I know why you don't leave. Madara's tone gradually softened, and he raised his hand to unbutton his shirt, revealing his strong upper body. The two looked over immediately, and saw that the original injury on Madara's chest had long been healed, and the piece of flesh that had been unable to heal for a long time had also completely merged into Madara's wound, condensing into a pale scar without the slightest blood color. Over the years, my strength has gradually recovered. Although it is far less than that of the past, it has almost returned to the level of Kage. Madara's voice was very calm, his expression was indifferent, revealing his usual domineering, don't worry, even without you, I won't be in any danger. Haha, Lord Madara is so powerful, I'm not bored enough to worry about your safety. Shenyu picked up a piece of meat and put it in the bowl, and glanced at the last piece of braised pork. Yeah, I can't even take care of myself. Guang muttered in a low voice. Actually, I'm not angry about Hashirama. Madara shook his head and laughed. For a moment, his eyes were deep, and his tone was filled with warmth of trust. I also have a successor, and my successor, Uchiha Madara, is no worse than anyone else. Kamyu and Hikari were stunned. The former took a deep breath, as if to calm down, while the latter's wrist trembled slightly, and her almond eyes became misty. Seeing the reactions of the two, Madara smiled lightly, I'll say this one last time. Either you come out of retreat and experience immediately, or you never go out again. Kamyu picked up the braised pork with lightning speed, threw it into her mouth, and said vaguely, I suddenly realized it. It's really strange. Izanagi, so simple. Hikari didn't speak, but she stood up quickly and put the fan and sickle behind her. The two walked out of the stone room tacitly. The stone door of the base opened wide. At the moment of stepping out, Hikari seemed to want to look back, but was pulled by Kamyu. Then he held back and stepped out of the door at the same time as the two. Madara quietly stared at the backs of the two men. The sunlight blurred their outlines and also illuminated Madara's face, the deep, undisguised relief that had been on his face for the past 6 years. The Land of Fire, Konoha Village. The feast is coming soon. Tomorrow is Princess Tsunade's 100-day feast. The top leaders of the 5 major ninja villages will gather in Konoha again. The streets are full of flowers and people are coming and going. Countless shops are rising. Colorful welcome banners are fluttering in the wind. It is a grand occasion. Somewhere in a tall building, a lonely figure is standing on the roof in a daze, silently looking down at the bustling village. The lights decorate the streets with colorful lights, and the evening breeze brings faint laughter. He just watches quietly, as if he is from another world. After an unknown period of time, another figure swished beside him, breaking the tranquility. Jing, let's have a meal together after the end. The man smiled and said. As soon as he appeared, a faint smell of alcohol floated from his body. Patriarch, you drank. Uchiha Jing's tone was a little surprised. Hey, how many times have I told you to call me captain outside? Calling me clan leader is too formal. Uchiha Huohei waved his hand, put his hand on Jing's shoulder, his cheeks flushed. Besides, you are now one of the direct disciples of Lord Tobarama. In terms of status, you are much higher than me, a small clan leader. Hiccup, when you become a high-level person and become a Hokage in the future, I may have to call you. What about Jing? Ha 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 ha. Jing frowned slightly. Captain Huohei, tonight is a critical moment, and security work is the top priority. The banquet is not over yet, how can you drink? Oh, yes, Jing is scolding. Huohei patted his face and said with a smile, I left my post without permission, I should be punished. I should be punished. I will toast you 3 cups later. Jing gently moved his shoulders forward and kept a distance from Huohei. A little distance, Captain, I appreciate your kindness, but I want to stay alone for a while after the party. Huohei was slightly startled, realizing that Jing's mood was not right, and hurriedly said, Jing, are you angry? Hey, today is such a festive day, I was just joking with you under the influence of alcohol. Don't take it seriously. I'm not angry, I just want to stay alone for a while. Jing shook his head and squeezed out a forced smile. I will get together with everyone again when I have time in the future. Well, okay, don't take it seriously. Huohei patted Jing's shoulder, turned around and left, muttering, what happened today? Not only did Setsuna not come to the party, but even Jing didn't come. After Huohei left, Jing flicked his sleeves towards his previous position, and a gust of wind escape chakra blew out, blowing away all the alcohol. His eyes returned to calm, with a little loneliness in the calm, and looked at the street below again. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he disappeared instantly, leaving only a leaf falling slowly. In a corner of the street, the Kurigakure delegation had an argument with the villagers. That kid, try saying, little mustache, again. Hidden Moon clenched his fists and glared at a child across the street, with veins bulging out of his forehead. Behind him, several Kurigakure guards noticed his anger and took action, tacitly setting up a cordon to isolate the increasing number of villagers. Beside Wanyu, a man with long black hair sighed helplessly and reached out to hold Wanyu's shoulder. Hey, after all, you are now our second-generation Mizukage, give me some tolerance. Mizuno Sora, are you also speaking for this brat? But you know what I hate most in my life. Wanyu was still angry. I told you not to mention this name in front of me, but this brat still called it. This is deliberately provoking me. Across the street, a child hid behind 2 Konoha ninjas, making faces. The black-haired man glanced around and noticed the increasingly tense atmosphere, and reminded, this is Konoha, we are here as guests, why do you care about a little kid? Okay, you are the only one who has a big picture view, and you know the current situation. Wanyu also realized that something was wrong, so he had to shake his sleeves and vent his anger on his companion. HMPH, you are so outstanding, why did the old man choose me as the Mizukage before he died? At this time, Uchiha Jing landed lightly in the field, his hand on the saber, and his tone was cold. No trouble is allowed in Konoha village. Wanyu glanced casually, and just this one glance, his sight suddenly froze. His pupils shrank suddenly, his expression suddenly became extremely ugly, cold sweat flowed down his forehead, and he instantly rushed dozens of meters away, as if facing a great enemy. You, why are you here? He shouted from a distance. Jing frowned in confusion, unable to understand why the new Mizukage had such an attitude. Not to mention him, even the Kurigakure people were confused, wondering what happened to the Mizukage today, why he was so startled. Mizunatsuki Sora covered her face with some disgust, but Hazuka Genjutsu was the strongest man in Kurigakure is now scared by a kid whose chakra strength is not even at the level of Kage. Mr. Mizukage, we don't seem to have met before, Jing asked tentatively. Wanyu also realized at this time that he seemed to have recognized the wrong person. He let out a long breath and almost fainted. Too much like. Black eyes and black hair, clear bones, the appearance of the person in front of him is almost 70% similar to the devil boy 6 years ago. But if you look closely, there are still some differences in the eyebrows and eyes. Wanyu rubbed his eyes and walked back slowly. There was no way. The impression of that year was too deep, especially the playful smile. Thinking about it still makes my scalp numb. Although he is now a Mizukage, the feeling of being a fish at the mercy of others and having no control over life and death is really too suffocating. He doesn't want to experience it again in his life. Sorry, I recognized the wrong person. At this time, a gloomy sneer came from the street. Hehe, you're actually scared like this by a young boy from Konoha. Kurigakure is really getting more and more promising. Wanyu turned around and saw a man walking slowly from the end of his vision. This man had slender hands and feet, and his whole body was wrapped in bandages, with only a pair of sinister eyes exposed. It's been a long time since we last met, Wu. Wanyu folded his arms, and there was a flash of pure murderous intent in his eyes. I heard that your Lord Ishikawa died. Congratulations, now you are the Tsuchikage. Same here. The second generation Tsuchikage and Wanyu looked at each other, looking at each other as if they were looking at a dead person. Uchiha Jing suddenly felt tricky. The current atmosphere was like a powder keg that could explode at any time. These two were the youngest Kages in the world. Once they started fighting, this street would be destroyed in an instant. Just when he was in a state of panic, a hand patted his back, followed by a deep voice. There is no duel field prepared for you two in the village. If you want to fight, you can go to the neighboring Wind Country and fight to the death after the banquet. Senju Tobarama, wearing a loose blue divine robe, walked out from behind Jing. Teacher. Jing showed a grateful look, and the stone in his heart finally fell. Leave this to me, you go and get busy. Tobarama said without looking back, then put his hands in his sleeves and greeted the late-coming Iwagakure delegation. Jing nodded immediately and assisted other Konoha ninjas to evacuate the onlookers. After the situation returned to normal, he breathed a sigh of relief. He retreated back to the alley silently and closed his eyes slightly. At the Hokage rock, a figure appeared silently beside a kunai inserted into the rock wall. Uchiha Jing opened his eyes. At this moment, everything around him was silent, with only the cool evening breeze as his companion, as if he was far away from the hustle and bustle of the world. His eyelids were lowered, and everything below was reflected in his eyes. The Konoha village was decorated with lights and was still prosperous. The Uchiha clan's territory in the distance was also brightly lit and bustling. Only he was standing on the deserted Hokage rock, silently overlooking the village. Late at night, Uchiha Jing sat alone on the Hokage rock, overlooking the Konoha village in a daze. Just as he was lost in thought, he suddenly noticed the movement behind him. He tilted his head slightly, and before he could see the person clearly, a faint smell of alcohol floated into his nose. Clan leader. Jing was a little surprised, but frowned slightly. Why are you here? Jing, you are here after all. Uchiha Huohei waved his hand and smiled bitterly. Well, I am a person who tends to get carried away when I drink too much. I may have said something very excessive just now. Don't take it to heart. I am not that sensitive. Jing scratched his head, and faced with Huohei's sincere eyes, he was suddenly at a loss. I just like quietness. Huohei walked over. Jing wanted to get up, but was gently held down by Huohei. Chief, don't treat me as an elder. Jing, I am actually as young as you. Huohei smiled and blinked, then sat down beside Jing and looked down at Konoha village with him. Ah, so the scenery here is like this, hee, quiet and comfortable, it's all so good. Jing was a little surprised. Isn't the tribe holding a cocktail party? At this time, you should stay in the tribe. I stay in the tribe to accompany my tribe members. Huohei looked at the brightly lit tribe land, his eyes wandering. Jing is also my tribe member. Jing suddenly lowered his eyes, and something in his heart twitched slightly. As for me, I don't think I'm qualified to be the chief. After all, my predecessor was too good and no one could compare to him. This is obvious to all. I can be promoted because everyone has praised me. Huohi leaned back, supporting himself with his hands, looking slack. I know I have many shortcomings. Many times I can't pay attention to everyone's emotions. So, if you have any troubles, you can tell me. Jing hesitated and remained silent. You are actually very lonely. Quote exclamation mark exclamation mark exclamation mark quote. Jing looked up suddenly and denied it flatly. How could it be? I have a group of reliable companions, beloved teachers, and tribe members who are as close as brothers. How could I be lonely? Haha, are they really as close as brothers? You can fool others, but you can't fool me. Huohi laughed and said, I have been the chief for so many years. Don't I know that there are a few unsociable people in the tribe? One of them is you. Chief, I don't actually. You are always like this. You start to stutter when you are nervous. Huohi patted his head. His shoulder. Is it because of your brother? You can't get over it because he left the village with Madara-sama. Jing corrected in a low voice. It was treason. It's not important, just tell me if it's because of him. No matter what, he is my brother. Over the years, every time I think of that night, I feel extremely painful. Jing's voice was weak. If it weren't for me, those companions wouldn't have died. Do you think you killed them? Well, I always feel that I am a sinner, and I am the culprit of the killing, so whether it is the village or I am too ashamed to face the clan, and I cannot truly integrate myself into it. Jing felt a little cold, and his body twitched slightly. I am the sinner. Huohi stared at him for a while, his eyes deep, and after a while, he suddenly said, if I kill Uchiha Shenyu and let him die in front of you, do you think you can let it go? Clan leader, Jing was startled and said quickly, don't go and die, he is very strong and scary, he is a strong man who is not inferior to the cage level. I haven't seen him for 6 years, who knows how strong he will be. Huohi waving his hand, I'm just giving an example. If he died, would you let it go? Jing took a deep breath, his eyes became firm, and he looked at Huohi, Chief, no matter how many crimes he committed, he is my brother. If one day, I bring him back to the village, if he must be sentenced to death, I hope to exchange my life for him. I know this is too much, but I also said that if it weren't for me, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Huohi looked into his eyes quietly, his eyes were as calm as a lake, and he was silent for a rare time. Chief, I just hope you can support me and stand on my side when the time comes. Support you to die for him. Huohi looked up at the night sky, the stars were shining, and he let out a long breath. Okay, I understand. I didn't expect that Jing's idea was like this. Jing hung his head, a little bored. Chief, do you think my idea is naive? No. Unexpectedly, Huohi actually stood up and gave him a hug, whispering, these years, you have worked hard, you. Jing's mind was blank. While he was still in a daze, Huohi patted his butt and stood up, laughing and said, oh, I was a little sentimental. It's getting colder and colder at night, go back early, tomorrow's dinner is the highlight. Jing watched him leave, and then looked at the lively Konoha village, and a smile unconsciously crossed his lips. After opening his heart, the feeling of loneliness in the world was diluted a lot. The next day, the dinner was held as scheduled. Inside the Hokage building. The restaurant was already crowded with people at this moment. The wine-red ceiling, the walls decorated with flowers, and the precious the carpet, when the light shines on it, flows with gorgeous colors between blood and roses. The long table is full of people, it is so lively, the rich dishes are neatly arranged, fragrant and steaming, not only the cages of the other 4 ninja villages but also their guards are invited to the table. First of all, I really thank everyone for participating in Tsunade's 100 Days banquet. If the 5 major countries can always be like this. Senju Hashirama, wearing a white dress, sat in the main seat, and his true feelings were revealed as he spoke, and he shed tears. Sitting in the second seat, Tobarama silently covered his face and said in a low and serious voice, brother, you are the strongest cage, there is no need to do this. But, Hashirama looked at his brother with tears in his eyes, I am so moved. Mr. Hashirama is still the same as before, true to his nature. Reikage said in a muffled voice while eating chicken legs. Feng continued. Speaking of which, time is really unforgiving. 6 years have passed, and we are all more or less old. Take Kurigakure and Iwagakure for example. The guards who participated in the 5 Kage talks back then have all been promoted to Kage, but Mr. Hokage is still young. Humph, Fengying is joking. Hozumi Wanyu stroked his mustache and winked. Mr. Hashirama is the god of the ninja world, how can he be compared to the old stone of Iwagakure village? Think about yourself before you talk about others. Brainless people are like this. They don't even know that they have scolded themselves. Opposite, the second-generation Tsuchikage Wu responded with a muffled voice. Brainless people, look at you, you look like a ghost, and you still have the face to talk about others. Wanyu spread his hands and sneered, but this can't be blamed on you. After all, you are all ugly in Iwagakure village. How can anyone look like a normal person? Quote. He pointed casually, hey, that shorty over there, if you don't come to the table, I won't be able to see you. Behind Wu, the 2 great scales Onoki stood like a minion, staring at the Kurigakure people with unfriendly eyes, and put his hands together. Calm down, Onoki, we won't get angry with stupid donkeys. Wu glanced at his disciples. Bandage man, if you dare to scold me again, I will send you to the ground directly. Wanyu stood up with an undisguised murderous intent. Hey, Tobirama knocked on the table. On the day of the big wedding, my brother and I don't want to see blood, and don't forget. He dragged out the sound, making everyone listen unconsciously. Uchiha Madara, he's not dead yet. As soon as this was said, everyone fell silent. Back then, Tobirama, out of some selfish motives, did not dispose of Madara's body, but took advantage of Hashirama's coma to move it to a secret room in the mountains. But when he finished fighting with Kamiya and dragged his exhausted body to the secret room, he found that Madara's body was just a shadow clone. So, he portrayed Uchiha Madara as a destroyer who hated the world and destroyed peace everywhere, and spread it to all corners of the world. This also caused the 5 major countries to be on high alert, worried that one day Uchiha Madara's sickle would swing over their heads. But 6 years later, the so-called Uchiha Madara not only did not appear, but disappeared, which made everyone doubt the authenticity of Tobirama's words. Pa. At this time, Hashirama clapped his hands, attracting everyone's attention. A dinner party should be like a dinner party. Let's not talk about these things. With a smile on his face, he asked casually, where's Sasuke? And where's Fire Core? The banquet has already started, why haven't the leaders of the 2 major clans come yet? However, as soon as he finished speaking, a loud bang was heard outside the Hokage building. A dazzling light flashed, and the storm swept away with the heat, and the glass of the entire building shook violently. Hashirama stood up instantly, turned his head and looked out the window, his eyes sharp. That direction is the Sarutobi clan. 10 minutes ago. Outside the Sarutobi clan, Sasuke Sarutobi, who had finished a day's patrol mission, stretched his body, and after instructing his clansmen, he rubbed his sore shoulders and walked towards the Hokage building. You look a little tired, Chief Sasuke. Sasuke looked back and saw Uchiha Fire Core walking up slowly from behind with a friendly smile on his lips. I'm old, there's nothing I can do. This era will eventually be handed over to you young people. Sasuke responded with a smile. He walked side by side with him. Why haven't you seen Hiruzen recently? He went to the tribe of the Sarumo and was preparing to conclude a spiritual contract. I heard from Jing that we are all disciples of Master Tobirama, but our relationship has never been harmonious. Oh, Sasuke chuckled, as the leader of the Huohi clan coming to settle accounts with an old man like me. Huohi waved his hands repeatedly. How could it be? I just confirmed their relationship. From what you said, it seems that it really doesn't work. When did you care so much about Uchiha Jing? Sasuke didn't care. When talking to Uchiha, it's best to be cautious. Puchi. A light blue blade pierced through his chest. Sasuke was stunned and looked at Uchiha Huohi in disbelief. I have always cared about him. With a bang, Sarutobi Sasuke turned into a wooden stake. Huohei shook his hands calmly and tilted his head slightly. When did you find out? I found out at the beginning. Uchiha Huohei usually doesn't talk to me. Oh, you are still smart. Those idiots in the clan didn't even notice that their clan leader had been replaced. Sasuke appeared from behind the wall, and immediately climbed onto the wall after making a seal. It was obvious that he didn't intend to talk nonsense with him. Spirit summons. Show up, Ape Demon King. In the billowing white smoke, a huge ape jumped out and slammed his fists to the ground. Don't you plan to reminisce with me at all? You are so unromantic. Huohei shook his head with regret, and his figure swayed, easily avoiding the attack of the ape demon. I have nothing to say to you. Sasuke stretched out his hand, and the Sarutobi demon swung his body and turned into a Vajra Rui stick and fell into his hand. He said viciously, Uchiha Shenyu. Have you been discovered? Haha, then there is nothing we can do. Uchiha Huohei, or Uchiha Shenyu opened his bright red eyes, then I have to finish you in 20 seconds. Sasuke charged up and raised the huge Vajra Rui stick straight into the sky, like a meteorite from outer space, smashing down on his head. However, Shenyu did not dodge or avoid, and instantly completed the seal, fire style, dragon flame song technique. The flames flashed, and 4 realistic dragon heads lit up the night, carrying rolling heat waves, and went straight to the Sarutobi clan. Sasuke widened his eyes. When he fell with this stick, the opposite fire core would die, but the clan's land would inevitably be blown up by the fire dragon, and there would be casualties everywhere. This style of play is really rogue to the extreme. At the critical moment, he had to withdraw his stick and rush back to help, urging the Rui stick to disperse the dragon heads one by one. Swish, swish, swish. 3 green sword energies came through the air, and Sasuke noticed it in advance and raised his stick to block it. The Vajra Rui stick immediately emitted countless sparks. However, a shadow flashed behind him, and a figure silently solidified. Autumn dew on leaves, was like a jade green longsword, and the blade light was as thin as a hair. He chopped at his neck fiercely. Hand of the ape demon. At the critical moment, a hairy hand stretched out from the Vajra Rui stick and grabbed the light blade. Ah, it hurts. A cry of pain came from the Rui stick, and the ape demon's hand quickly pulled back. Shenyu missed the attack and jumped back immediately. A gust of wind immediately rippled on the flat ground. In the process of being in the air, he made a seal with both hands. Fire style. Great fire extinction. He took a deep breath, then opened his mouth and spit out a huge amount of fire gathered and formed, like a meteorite falling from the sky. The air was instantly heated to thousands of degrees. Before the flames approached, Sarutobi Sasuke's clothes began to burn. Fortunately, the hand of the ape demon just now won Sasuke reaction time. He stood with the stick, and the Vajra stick spun rapidly, bringing a strong gust of wind, absorbing all the flames before the sea of fire spread. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Sasuke's face was tense, and he gritted his teeth. Even though his skin was burned by the flames, he never stopped. As the Vajra Rui stick spun faster and faster, a strong wind blew in front of him, and even Shenyu in the air was bound by the suction force and quickly approached the Rui stick. Vajra prison wall. Sasuke threw the Vajra Rui stick fiercely, and dozens of Rui sticks flew out from the scattered white smoke, splicing into a cage in the air, trapping Shenyu inside. Die. Sasuke made a seal of fire escape and was about to spit it out, but Shenyu in the cage suddenly turned into a half-wooden stake. What? His feet were swept by a huge force, and Shenyu appeared behind him at some point, and a sudden sweep kick made Sasuke's body uncontrollably suspended in the air. Rasengan. A buzzing sound instantly rose, Shenyu's mouth corners raised, and the blue light gathered in the palm of his hand into a high-density spinning chakra ball, pressing hard on Sasuke's back. The spiral force penetrated his body, and under the strong feeling of pushing back, Sasuke turned into a straight long line and flew out. It's not over yet. I can still fight to the death. He showed the qualities of a battle-hardened ninja. The moment before being hit by the Rasengan, he urged the Yang escape chakra to protect his back. Although his internal organs were still damaged, it was not fatal. He accumulated power in midair, and the chakra in his body flowed rapidly, rushing towards a certain acupuncture point. 8 gates. A shadow flashed in front of his eyes, and the sound of gas explosions exploded in his ears. Shenyu appeared in front of Sasuke strangely, exhaled, raised his hand, and a sharp sword finger hit the Tanjong acupoint. It's useless. Shenyu still smiled. I knew you could do this. Sasuke's eyes widened. He was horrified, and the chakra that had just surged in his body dissipated instantly. 6 years ago, you could cut off one of my arms, but today, you don't even have the qualifications to see my true body. Shenyu whispered. It's night, disappear quietly. Green light burst out, autumn dew on leaves, pierced out from the fingertips. The dazzling green light was like a sword, piercing directly through Sasuke's body, and even the building behind him was blown up. Ah, my ankle is sprained. I'm not used to using someone else's body to explode the instant body technique. Shenyu made a shallow seal, and hundreds of detonating talismans buried in the Konoha Academy opposite the Sarutobi clan's land suddenly ignited with flames, followed by a violent explosion. The teaching building was reduced to ruins in the explosion, thick smoke billowed, buildings collapsed in pieces, and the ground shook violently. Although no casualties were caused, Shenyu felt relieved when he saw Tobirama's hard work collapse. About half a minute later, Shenyu smiled and looked back, and countless figures appeared in his field of vision. Hashirama Senju, Tobirama Senju, the shadows of the 4 major ninja villages, countless Anbu wearing animal face masks. This scene is so similar to 11 years ago, except that this time, he didn't have Madara to save him. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.